Good evening and welcome to the Agoura Hills City Council meeting of May 27th, 2026. At this time, please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices. If you wish to speak or submit a written comment, please complete a comment card for each agenda item and submit it to the city clerk prior to the public comment portion of the item. I will now call the meeting to order. As usual, I'm going to start off with our land acknowledgement and acknowledge that the city of Agoura Hills occupy land originally and still inhabited and cared for by the Chumash Nation. Descendants of the Chumash still remain, and we honor and pay our respects to their elders and groups that make up the past, present, and emerging as they continue their stewardship of our lands. We have a responsibility and a commitment to elevate the stories, culture, and community of the original inhabitants of Agoura Hills, and we are grateful to be able to live and work on these ancestral lands. Now we're moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will defer to Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, thank you. Please stand. Right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance.
Making sure. I will now move on to roll call and defer to the city clerk.
Good evening. Councilmember Anderson?
Here.
Councilmember Anstead?
Here.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez?
Here.
Mayor Wolf?
Here.
Mayor Wolf, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. There was no closed session tonight, so there is no report of closed session needed. We're now moving on to the approval of the agenda. Will the makers of the motion and the second to approve the agenda please state your names?
City Councilman Chris Anstead makes a motion to approve the agenda.
Councilmember Sylvester seconds.
Thank you. I will now defer to the city clerk for roll call.
Councilmember Anderson?
Aye.
Councilmember Anstead?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez?
Aye.
Mayor Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Wolf, you have approval 5-0.
Fantastic. Okay, the fun part. We're now moving on to our presentation. So I am going to move over to the other side of the dais. Good evening. It's been a while. I am so thrilled to announce that our May Business of the Month is RMS Printing here in Agoura Hills. And with that, I'm going to call up Salim. Will you come stand up next to me? Congratulations. So I'm going to read a little something, and then I'm going to turn the microphone over to you and then to the council. But tonight we are so proud to recognize RMS Printing as the Agoura Hills Business of the Month. For many years, RMS Printing has brought creativity, professionalism, and a deep commitment to the community into everything they do. Since their founding in 1992, they have grown into a trusted partner for local businesses and organizations, helping strengthen how our community communicates, connects, and presents itself. Their work has supported countless local events, nonprofits, city initiatives, often behind the scenes, but always with a meaningful and a lasting impact. Beyond their professional services, RMS Printing consistently invests time, energy, and care into our community. They support local programs, they help organizations expand their outreach, and they help contribute to creative solutions and help others succeed. What truly sets them apart is the way they show up for Agoura Hills. Salim and the entire RMS Printing team reflect the values that we value most in our local business community, including hard work, innovation, reliability, and a genuine spirit of service. Their contribution can be seen not only in their industry, but in their relationships, and the partnerships they have built across our city, and they've left a lasting and positive impact well beyond your day-to-day work. So on behalf of the City Council, thank you for your continued dedication to our community, and congratulations on this very well-deserved honor of being selected as the Business of the Month. I'm now going to turn it over to you to say a few words. And I'll shake your hand first.
So thank you, Jeremy, and thank you to the City of Agoura Hills for this incredible honor. As the owner of RMS Printing for over 30 years, being recognized as a Business of the Month truly means a great deal. When I look back, it's amazing to think about where this journey began. RMS Printing started in the living room of my home in London. Just a small idea, a lot of determination. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine that it would one day bring me here to Agoura Hills, helping thousands of people whilst building lasting relationships with the organizations that make this city special. Over the years, I've seen a lot of changes in the printing industry. Technology has evolved, trends have shifted, and the way people communicate has transformed. But one thing that has remained constant in this wonderful community of Agoura Hills. This city has a spirit of support, connection, and kindness that you don't find everywhere. It's the people who make this work meaningful. I also want to take a moment to thank my wife, my 2 sons, relatives, neighbors, and my close friends who have been by my side through every challenge and milestones. To the City of Agoura Hills, thank you again for this recognition. It's an honor that I will always cherish. And it inspires me to continue serving this community with the same passion and commitment that brought me here in the first place.
So well deserved. Before we present you with your official proclamation, I would like to turn it over to the City Council to see if they have...
Again as well, Mary, and any other city representatives that join us. We appreciate our partnership with the city to support our local hotel partners and businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
I'm not sure. Did you wish to speak for this? Go ahead and come up.
You can fill out the card after.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Mullen. I'm the Government Relations.
Hold the mic a little closer to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Stephanie Mullen, and I'm the Government Relations Manager for Southern California Edison. It is such a pleasure to represent your city. This month, even just today, I've had the pleasure of meeting with your staff to talk about upcoming PSPS in this coming year, as well as our tug and hardening program. I just wanted to let you all know that when it comes to hardening our grid, that will help to reduce outages as well as reduce our thresholds for public safety power shutoffs and wildfire mitigations. For the city of Agoura Hills, when we look at all of the covered conductor as well as undergrounding programs that are coming up and will be a part of this year through 2028, there is 93% of your circuits will be hardened. So that's really great news. That means only 8.6% of your circuits are not hardened. When you look at the region, it's usually an average of about 30 to 40% of circuits are not able to be hardened within this period. So I'm really glad of the work that we'll be doing to serve the constituents of Agoura Hills, and to work very closely with your fantastic city manager and planning and public works departments. We'll be meeting monthly to talk about projects that are taking place. So thank you again for the opportunity to serve you and to work so closely with your city. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Are there any other public comments?
No. No further speaker cards.
Great, thank you. We'll now move on to the consent calendar. This section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items on the consent calendar. I will now defer to the city clerk for any public comments.
Thank you. We did not receive any written correspondence, nor do we have any speaker card.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the city council on the consent calendar? Seeing or hearing none, I will call for a motion and a second to adopt the consent calendar. Will the makers of the motion and the seconds state your name?
I move to adopt the consent calendar. Deborah Klein Lopez.
City Councilman Chris Anstead, seconds.
Thank you. I will now defer to the city clerk for roll call.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Anstead,
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez,
Aye.
Mayor Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Wolf, you have approval 5-0.
Great. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the main events. So public hearing item number 5. Our next item is to conduct a public hearing to consider adopting a resolution certifying and adopting the final programmatic environmental impact report for the bicycle master plan, vehicle miles traveled mitigation exchange and banking program, and general plan amendment, and adopting the findings of fact, the statement of overriding considerations, and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Number 2, a resolution adopting a bicycle master plan. And number 3, a resolution adopting a general plan amendment, amending Chapter 3, Infrastructure and Community Services, with textual revisions to reference and maintain consistency with the bicycle master plan, and to revise general plan bikeways to provide an updated overview of the bicycle network within the city. I will now open the public hearing and defer to the Director of Public Works and City Engineer, Charmaine Yambao, for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Wolf, and honorable members of the City Council. Again, I'm Charmaine Yambao, Director of Public Works, City Engineer. Tonight, I'm pleased to bring forward an important step in advancing mobility, safety, and sustainability in our community: the certification and approval of the Agoura Hills Bicycle Master Plan Programmatic Environmental Impact Report, or as I may sometimes commonly refer to it as EIR. This effort represents a comprehensive look at how we can expand and enhance our bicycle network to better serve residents, reduce reliance on single occupancy vehicles, and align with broader regional and state goals related to climate action and active transportation. Joining us this evening are Taylor Freeman, Senior Environmental Planner with Rincon Consultants, who has led the environmental analysis and preparation of the EIR, and Matt Stewart, our City Traffic Engineer with Kimley Horn and Associates, who has been instrumental in developing the Bicycle Master Plan itself, including the network recommendations, community outreach, and technical analysis. Tonight's presentation will provide an overview of the Bicycle Master Plan, key findings of the EIR, and the recommended actions before the City Council tonight. I'd like to begin by outlining the agenda of this presentation. First, we will start with a brief introduction to the Bicycle Master Plan itself, the project background, its purpose, goals, and how it fits into the broader transportation and sustainability framework for our community. Then next, we'll go into the summary of the project description and components analyzed in the EIR. Then I will hand it over to Taylor, who will provide the environmental overview and CEQA process. This will include what a programmatic EIR is and how it differs from project-level environmental review. And we will conclude with this presentation with the recommendations to the City Council on the actions for tonight. And of course, following the presentation, we welcome your questions and feedback. Now, I'd like to give some background. It's quite lengthy. It's been on my plate for quite some time. The city of Agoura Hills, as we all know, is famously known as the gateway to the Santa Monica Mountains, but the city is also widely recognized as a premier cycling destination, serving as a hub for both serious training and recreational riding in Southern California. The city's existing bicycle network includes 1.3 miles of bicycle routes, which are the Class 3, where vehicles and bicycles share the roadway, and 9.2 miles of bicycle lanes, which are Class 2 bicycle lanes, dedicated facilities for bicycles. So back in 2020, the City Council adopted implementation of vehicle miles traveled, commonly referred to VMT, for transportation evaluation and clearance under CEQA, What this means is when a development project is identified to exceed the VMT threshold of significance, mitigation strategies can be implemented to reduce the VMT. Bicycle infrastructure strategies are included as part of the list of mitigation a developer can choose to implement to reduce VMT. Then in 2021, the city began development of a draft bicycle master plan, which I can sometimes commonly refer to as BMP. And this is to build upon the city's existing bicycle network, developing a citywide network that ensures residents have access to safe facilities, meeting both commuter and recreational needs, provides connectivity to regional bicycle facilities, and provides standard design details for typical bicycle facility types and treatments. The development of the BMP has been an ongoing process with a robust community engagement. This was very integral to the plan's success. The community engagement strategies included an online survey, project space on the city's website, community workshops with activities, online engagement tools like Strava, social media announcements, and stakeholder outreach with Los Angeles County Sheriff, Las Virgenes Unified School District, the Community Services Department, local city and county partners, and local homeowners associations. A draft of the BMP was made available in August of 2022 for public review and further input, and then in September of 2022, the draft BMP was presented to City Council for their feedback. The city's proposed bicycle master plan provides a vision that will lay out a diverse network of interconnected bicycle corridors linking local and regional destinations. It will encourage bicyclists of all types, increase and encourage bicycling in Agoura Hills as a viable alternative mode of transportation, create support facilities and programs to support the existing and future population of the city. The project components that were analyzed in the programmatic environmental impact report presented here today include, of course, the first component is the bicycle master plan that proposes to build upon the city's existing bicycle facilities with 30.1 miles of new bikeways and bikeway improvements. Included as part of the BMP were 2 projects with conceptual layout design plans to allow more specific assessment of environmental impacts. Those projects were the Medea Creek Pathway, which was a 2-mile Class 1 bicycle pathway along Medea Creek Channel from the northerly city limits to Agoura Road, and Agoura High School connection, which was similar to the Medea Creek Pathway, but much shorter, 0.2-mile bicycle path from the intersection of Argo Street and Thousand Oaks Boulevard to Easterly Road and Fountain Place right behind the high school. The second component is a VMT mitigation and exchange banking program to establish a mitigation opportunity for projects exceeding the CEQA VMT threshold. These funds would be used to implement projects identified in the BMP. And the third component is a general plan amendment. These are minor amendments to the general plan infrastructure and community services element that ensures consistency with the bicycle master plan. The amendments propose to primarily shift the focus from prioritizing vehicle mobility to reducing VMT through alternative transportation modes, like walking and biking as guided by the BMP. I wanted to show here, and this slide is the current bicycle network in figure in Chapter 4 of the general plan. And then here on this slide, it's a little muted, but it's the proposed bicycle network within the bicycle master plan. The proposed recommendations that are shown on this slide provide a comprehensive backbone network on primary arterials and facilities on local streets. You can see it's a much more robust system. And this figure is proposed to replace the general plan bikeways exhibit figure M7. We've talked a lot about bicycle facilities, and this slide provides us a visual of each of the 4 different bicycle classes proposed by the bicycle master plan. Starting on the left side and moving to the right, we have first up is the Class 1. It's a 2-way facility dedicated to non-motorized users and completely independent of the roadway. Class 2 is a 1-way lane dedicated to bicyclists on the roadway with motorists. And that's what you see on Agoura Road today. Class 3 is a designed routes on low speed, low roadways. Motorists and bicyclists share the road, and you commonly will see what we call a sharrow painted on the roadway. And last is the Class 4 on the very right side of the slide, and this is a more protected version of the Class 2 bike lane, but it includes both horizontal and vertical buffers from the vehicles. Now I will hand it over to Taylor for the environmental overview.
Thank you, Charmaine. Good evening, Mayor Wolf, honorable members of the City Council. My name is Taylor Freeman. I'm a senior environmental planner. I'm here tonight representing Rincon Consultants. We prepared the environmental impact report for the bicycle master plan. I'm going to take a few minutes to present some slides that give an overview of the EIR process, both generally and for this project specifically. So at its core, CEQA is focused on public discourse and public disclosure. It requires that we analyze the environmental impacts of a project and we take those impacts into consideration before making a decision on a project. We do this through preparing environmental review documents such as an EIR. The EIR identifies potential significant environmental impacts, mitigation measures to avoid or reduce those impacts, and feasible project alternatives. There are two types of EIRs. There's a project level EIR, and this examines the environmental impacts of a specific development project. There's also a programmatic EIR. These provide a broader analysis of a series of actions or related projects that have similar impacts. We prepared a programmatic EIR for the bicycle master plan, and each individual project included within this plan will need to be reevaluated under CEQA prior to implementation. For the bicycle master plan project, a notice of preparation of an EIR was prepared and published on January 13th, 2025 for a 35-day scoping period that ended on February 17th, 2025. An EIR scoping meeting was held during a Planning Commission meeting on February 6th, 2025. The draft EIR was then prepared and circulated for a 67-day public review and comment period that began on November 25th, 2025 and ended on January 31st, 2026. The city received 2 comment letters in response to the draft EIR. One was from Caltrans, one was from CDFW. No comment letters were received from members of the public. On May 17th, the final EIR was provided in electronic format to both public agencies that provided comments on the draft EIR, and the final EIR was also released and posted on the city's website. The final EIR includes written responses to both comments received during the comment period, as well as the project's mitigation monitoring and reporting program. This takes the form of a detailed table of mitigation requirements, and it identifies who is responsible for seeing each measure out. I do want to note that no changes to the draft EIR were made in response to public comments. So we're now at the end of the CEQA process where City Council members will consider certifying the EIR and make a decision regarding project approval. The main body of the EIR is the impact analysis, and this slide in front of you here summarizes project impacts that required mitigation measures, and it notes what the resulting impact determination was following implementation of that measure. So as you can see, most impacts can be reasonably mitigated to a less than significant level. Impacts to cultural resources would remain significant and unavoidable. There were no project-specific cultural resources identified during our analysis, but construction activities could disturb both known and previously unknown or undiscovered cultural resources due to the city's known sensitivity. This would require implementation of the mitigation measures proposed within the EIR. And at the programmatic level, we do not know if project-specific impacts of these resources can be mitigated to less than significant. Because of that, this impact is considered significant and unavoidable in the EIR, and this impact may be reconsidered as individual projects are brought forth for approval and future implementation of those mitigation measures occurs. Under CEQA, projects involving new recreational facilities that cause physical environmental impacts are also considered to have a significant impact related to recreation. Because there would be significant and unavoidable impacts to cultural resources associated with this recreational project, impacts related to recreation are also considered significant and unavoidable. This is not an additional or a different impact. This is an impact to cultural resources reiterated in the recreational resources section of the impact analysis because this is a project with a recreational component. CEQA also requires an EIR describe a range of reasonable alternatives to a project. These alternatives seek to reduce impacts by modifying specific project components. There is no ironclad rule that governs the nature or the scope of alternatives to be considered other than the rule of reason, meaning only alternatives that could realistically achieve the project's objectives while mitigating significant environmental effects be considered. There were 3 alternatives for the proposed bicycle master plan. The first is a CEQA-required no project alternative. So in this case, the bicycle master plan, the VMT program, and the general plan amendments would not be adopted or implemented. Alternative 2 is the project minus Medea Creek Path and Agoura High School connection. So the bicycle master plan would be implemented without these 2 Class 1 facilities. And alternative 3 is only Class 2 and only Class 3 facilities. This would be a limited version of the bicycle master plan and would only include on-street bicycle facilities, excluding separated Class 1 and Class 4. The alternatives analysis includes a comparison of potential impacts associated with each alternative to the impacts of the proposed project. I want to note that alternative 1 would not fulfill the project objectives. Alternatives 2 and 3 would meet project objectives to a lesser extent, given the reduced miles of bicycle facilities implemented and improved on. And alternative 2 and 3 would not fulfill the project objective that aims to enhance community character by constructing bicycle facilities near areas of high scenic values, such as along greenbelts or near surface waters. Along with the final EIR, the City Council must also adopt findings of fact and a statement of overriding considerations. For each identified significant environmental impact, a specific finding must be made, which is essentially a written conclusion ensuring that decisions are supported by substantial evidence. Should an impact be identified as potentially significant, even with mitigation measures, a statement of overriding considerations must also be adopted to justify why the benefits of the project override the project's impacts. This concludes my summary of CEQA and the EIR environmental review process. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, but first I'll pass things back over to Charmaine to discuss staff recommendations.
Thank you, Taylor. So to conclude, staff respectively recommends the City Council adopt Resolution number 262130, certifying and adopting the final programmatic EIR SCH 2025010338 for the Bicycle Master Plan, VMT Mitigation Exchange and Banking Program, and General Plan Updates, case number PZ-2026-61-GPA, and adopting the findings of fact, the statement of overriding considerations, and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program. Resolution number 262131, adopting the Bicycle Master Plan, and Resolution number 262132, approving a general plan amendment, case number PZ-2026-61-GPA, amending Chapter 3, Infrastructure and Community Services, to reference and maintain consistency with the Bicycle Master Plan, and amending the General Plan Bikeways Exhibit Figure M7 to provide an updated overview of the bicycle network within the city. This concludes staff presentation, and we welcome your questions and feedback. Thank you.
Thank you for that detailed report. And before we move on to the public comments, do any council members have questions of staff? I see Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez, who made eye contact first, so I'll start with you.
Uh-oh. That's a good tip for me. All right, I'll know that going forward. I have a couple of questions, and then as we talk, I may have more. For the VMT mitigation and exchange and banking program, this is when developments come into our city, the developers have to mitigate the impacts, and they can do that by adding funds into this program. Is that correct?
That would be correct if we develop a program. This document paves the way for it, but we don't have the program established yet. But it is one of the strategies that we could implement.
Okay, and it's a strategy because, so I guess the question is, the developers are not ceding their responsibility of dealing with the impacts. It's they're kind of passing it to us, right? So we're banking the dollars for that. They're not paying for the mitigation directly. They're paying into a fund for us to do that. Is that correct?
That would be what the banking program would
Okay.
do.
And I guess the question is that a strategy so that we, the city, can control the larger picture? Why are we taking ownership of that rather than making the developers do that directly?
To be clear, there is no banking program, and
When there is. Yeah.
that would be an option for us to use only on projects that are in the BMP. We would use it much like what we recently did with the TIF on projects that we have that improve transportation. I do want to mention that the TDMs that are available to help mitigate BMT, they're quite plentiful. There's a number of different strategies, and the reason why we did not develop one right now is because there are plenty of other strategies that the developers can use to help lower their BMTs.
Okay, I guess I just want to make sure that we're not taking on a burden on behalf of the developers of another entity that might be creating these impacts.
That is correct. We're not taking on the burden.
Okay. And then I would like to clarify, particularly because of the significant and unavoidable impacts. We don't know what those impacts are, correct? We're just saying there might be, and when a project comes before us, there will be an additional EIR possibly, and that is when we will find out whether these impacts truly are significant and unavoidable?
Yes, that's correct. So due to the sensitivities within the city, and the known and previously undiscovered potential for cultural resources, the mitigation that is presented in the EIR is to do a site-specific cultural resource assessment as individual projects are brought forth.
Got it.
That way it can be more project-specific, and those assessments can provide more focused mitigation measure for the individual project. Because we don't know or do not have the opportunity to do that site-specific assessment with a programmatic EIR, we can't say whether that future assessment and recommended mitigation will be enough to reduce impacts to a less than significant level. So that's why the finding is still significant and unavoidable at the programmatic level.
It's kind of a conservative.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Okay, so then these are reconsidered as individual projects as they become funded and as they come to, I'm assuming, the Planning Commission and then the council, and it may even be that each project would then be, each segment, right, each specific project, they would each have an EIR, or they might not need an EIR. Like, I know maybe an MND. Or are they required to have an EIR? There are a lot of acronyms. I hope I'm saying them right.
Each project, as they become as part of our capital improvement program, as they develop, would have their own environmental document. And the environmental document, as part of that, they would determine how, I guess, what level or what type. So that has not been determined yet.
Got it. Okay. Okay. That's it for now. Thank you.
Staying on this side, Councilmember Anderson.
So, Charmaine, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Clyde Lopez. So, Charmaine, I have a much higher level question for you, and I'm going to, first of all, this has been a labor of love. That is a work of art. So will you paint a picture for me, for us, of what this plan will enable? What does the future of Agoura Hills potentially look like? Grants that we could receive, lanes that we could potentially develop. What's our vision?
So this is a long-term vision for the city. Obviously, it'll take many years to actually implement all of the projects that are outlined in the bicycle master plan. But with that said, it's also something that we could revisit and update as the community needs and whatever our vision could change in the future. But I hope with our sustainability and our CAP, everything, that this provides a path for safer routes for alternative transportation. And yes, a plan that's developed like this can be used to go after grants that would be available for alternative transportation projects.
Fantastic, thank you.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Thank you. Well, I just want to hold this up so everybody can see what they've done here. It's absolutely amazing. So thank you to all the staff for putting this together for us. And this is just a vision for what we can potentially do in the city in the future, correct? And we can work on it and finesse it going forward. But what we need to do tonight is to give you the green light to say, yes, this is a great plan, and it's something that we're going to keep working on. So nothing in here is locked in to specifics, correct?
That is correct.
Great, thank you. And I love the idea of making it safer for our students to get to school. What I do think is really interesting is that when we began this, we hadn't even heard about e-bikes. So I have a couple of e-bike questions for you, just to reassure people. E-bikes will be in this lane if they're class 1 or 2, correct? But not the fast ones. Does that make sense?
So to be clear, this is a plan for safer bicycle facilities, and you are correct. When we started developing this, e-bikes were thought of then, but not to the level where it is today. As we know, it's an ever-evolving situation. And but to answer your question today, the e-bikes are allowed in the different facilities on the roadway. That is correct.
Right, good. But if we had issues, we could come up with regulations, city regulations, to control things if things got out of hand. So
I will say again that this is, e-bike regulations continue to change, and if that is the desire of the council, we could agendize that at a later date.
lovely, great. And then a question for, we're talking about on Canaan and Teo, if we're going to have a separate, a barrier up for the bike lanes, which are the most heavily trafficked areas. You're talking about maybe reducing the width of a lane, but we wouldn't lose any lanes on those roads, correct?
That is correct.
Good, so I just want to reassure people about that. And then on these the ones that are just bike paths, for instance, the one going above Agoura High School, that will be allowed, pedestrians will be allowed on that too, right?
So the Class 1 facilities, such as the one behind the high school on Medea Creek, those are separated facilities from vehicles, and yes, they do allow pedestrians on them
Great,
as well.
so that will be a bonus for the high school for students that can be dropped off at the top of the hill, and then they could just, because I used to drop my kids off there many years ago, and they had to sort of slide down a dirt hill. Now there'll be a nice path. Okay, so that's
is correct.
Good to know.
And I did the same thing too with my kids. So.
And then coming from Roadside Drive, the bike path, there's an existing tunnel already under the freeway, correct? So we're not going to have to build a new tunnel. We'll just take advantage of what already exists in infrastructure there.
That is correct. There's an existing, it's a structure that allows for Medea Creek to continue to flow.
Great. Well, I'm very excited. I hope this will come about so I can actually use it before I can no longer ride a bicycle. So Thank you so much for everything you've all done.
Councilmember Anstead, any questions?
Sure. I guess one of the biggest questions I have is on the Medea Creek bike path. On the, I guess, the first part of the question is, on the environmental impacts, what percent, or is there a percent you can put on it, that the Medea Creek bike path impacted, where I just want to understand kind of how big of an impact that is on that pathway.
I can hand this over to Taylor, but are we talking about impacts as far as the...
Negative impacts.
Okay.
Negative impacts. Cultural and other things that you mentioned in the report.
Sure. So the way that we wrote the environmental impact report, we did group the facility types and provided the impact analysis that way. But the overarching conclusion to each impact is based on the plan programmatically as a whole, as a collective. So Medea Creek is not singled out in the impact conclusions. It's considering the full plan at the highest programmatic level.
Okay, thank you for that. If we were to move forward with the Medea Creek bike path, if we approve this plan, is there still further, and I think one of the council members asked that earlier, if we were to do that segment, we would have further hearings on that segment and further analysis that would have to be done if we were going to move forward with that segment.
That is correct, Councilmember Anstead. And it's a long process because it's a large, long project, obviously, so it has several layers to it before any final design.
Okay, so I want to make it, or ask the right question to make it clear. If in the future we decided to move forward with that project, we could limit the Medea Creek path not to what, like right now it's 2 miles long, like you talked about. It goes through a lot of different areas of our city, and I think I would want the residents that would be most impacted by those to make sure that they're noticed and before we decided whether we were going to move forward with that.
That would absolutely happen. And if I understand your other part of the question, any project could be phased for implementation, and whatever phase, whatever reach we choose would involve public workshops, just like we did when we did the planning of the bicycle master plan.
Excellent. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Please, Councilmember Sylvester.
Yes, because that was my initial thing too, and I think we're making it very clear that none of this is locked in at this point, and because we all have concerns about certain areas, and that's something that we will all work on together. So thank you.
Thank you. A few questions, and this was kind of answered, but I want to ask, if this is approved tonight, does this make the city more competitive for federal, state, and county grants, and why does it make us more competitive for these grants?
Absolutely, it would make us more competitive because we actually have a plan that's approved and it has quite a bit of detail in it. If you notice, we did some conceptual plans on a couple of the projects, so it even elevates it to that level where we have some, I don't want to say pre-design, but some level of detail that we've had some thought on it. And obviously the public outreach that we've done for the document itself speaks volumes to many federal grants that require that kind of input.
And is it safe, is there a box that you check saying that the city has a certified bicycle master plan on some of these grants? Or is it just included in the application?
Some applications have a box maybe, but I'm not sure on that, but definitely there's usually a section where we can describe what the city has done to further approve whatever project we might be going for or grant funding for any specific project, because this helps back it up.
Okay, that's helpful. And then regarding the grants, is the city of Agoura or is it Rincon or is a consulting firm in charge of monitoring what grants are out there and making sure we're being proactive to apply to them?
That would be the city, and we do have a group that does help us. But overall, a lot of our staff looks for it continually, In fact, we do have 2 grants that we've been awarded for projects that could implement these projects that are outlined in here.
Okay, that's great to hear. Another question, and it's kind of been asked, but in different regards. So we're talking about the thing behind the path behind Agoura High School, the Medea Creek path, the roadside path. How do we design the hierarchy of the order of the implementation of this? Is it all depend on what type of grant funding is available and we get, or how is the hierarchy established?
There really is no hierarchy, but in the plan itself, each project was examined and given like I'm forgetting the word now, but it's kind of like a priority, and that's the wrong word. It's more these projects and the impact that they provided. It took into account the cost, the number of people that would use it, the location, and the connections, and it gave them in 3 different tiers, only for the use of planning, if that's what we choose to do. Of course, at the higher level, this is up to the City Council and their goals and objectives for what's best for the city.
Okay, that's a great answer. Thank you. And the last question, I just want to reiterate that each one of these items that would require an EIR will come before a body like a Planning Commission or City Council before implementation.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions. Are there any, Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez?
Just one more question. The final programmatic EIR includes some letters from neighbors, like the County of Ventura, the City of Calabasas. Have you had discussions with our neighboring cities so that someday when our beautiful bike lanes are all 100% ready to go, they don't just like stop dead at a county line or at a city line? Do you ever discuss this at the COG level or with VCOG? How regional beyond Agoura Hills are these discussions, or is it really just is that thinking just too far ahead?
No, that's not thinking too far. That's actually a great question. And in the development of the BMP, we did take into consider all the regional plans as well as discuss with our community neighbors. Some changes were made in the bike master plan because of those communications. One that comes to mind is with the County of Los Angeles on Canaan, on their plan and what they were doing with it. So we wanted to align with our neighbors, not just have this as a kind of a siloed plan.
Excellent, thank you.
Seeing or hearing no other questions, the public hearing is open. I will now defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you. We did not receive any written correspondence, nor do we have any speaker cards.
Thank you so much. Before closing the public hearing, are there any other questions from the council? Seeing or hearing none, there being no further questions, I will now close the public hearing. We will now move on to deliberations, and I'm going to start with Councilmember Anstead on the deliberations for the.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate it. I think it was a great presentation. This bike master plan has been in the works, as mentioned earlier, 4 or 5 years. I think I've been a big proponent of the bike master plan. A lot of our communities near us, Thousand Oaks, Westlake Village, I know they've already created a lot of bike paths and a lot of bike I want to say easily accessible bike lanes in their communities, and I want to be in the forefront here in Agoura Hills as well with the bike lanes and the bike paths. And I think it's a great way to showcase our city. We talk about being the gateway to the Santa Monica Mountains and outdoor recreation in Agoura Hills. I think it's recreation and it's transportation. And the more that we can try to influence and try to persuade our families and our even our workers to use bikes and to leave the car at home in order to go to local restaurants and to go to elementary and high school, the more the better. And that's what I think this bike master plan does. It encourages that. And I know we've gotten some money for the plan so far, but we've got a long ways to go. And I hope this bike master plan, now that we're approving it will be able to get us more grant money through the state and federal governments. And so I'm all for it. I do think we need to look at each segment as we build out this bike master plan and make sure that we have input from residents and from other people that, businesses that are affected, and make sure that we get everybody on board before we move forward with different segments. But I think overall, there's a much bigger benefit to the environmental impacts, and therefore I can make the recommendation to move forward with this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Now move on to Council Member Anderson.
This is terrific. I remember this was one of the first things I learned about when I came on City Council. In fact, it was one of the things I learned about when I was running for City Council, and it was part of what made me proud of being an Agoura Hills resident and part of what made me want to serve on the City Council. Many of you know I rode a bike in our parade last year in support of this master bike plan. I think it, as I said, I think it's a work of art. It has been a labor of love. It is going to allow us to, Mayor Wolf's question is going to allow us to get grants that we would otherwise be able to get, to be able to then improve our bike lanes for our kids and for everybody. My 75-year-old uncle is out there riding e-bikes. So for the 75-year-old uncles out there, it's going to do amazing things for Agoura Hills. And as many of my fellow council members have pointed out, we will be able to check in every step of the way if there are concerns about anything that is being built, so that what actually then gets implemented reflects the values of the city of Agoura Hills. So I can make all of the findings, and I'm excited to vote yes on this tonight.
Thank you, Council Member Anderson. I'll now move to Council Member Sylvester.
Thank you. I second everything my fellow council members have said so far. You've done an incredible job. I know this has been years in the making, and we all appreciate everything that you've put into it. I think it's wonderful that we're thinking of families. I mean, I'm thinking of elementary school kids. If the parents feel safe riding with them in these separated bike lanes, getting them to school, what a great way to go to school in the morning. Get on your bike. You know, you don't have to jump in the car and sit in those long drop-off lines. It really will change people's lifestyles, and it'll be faster to ride a bike a couple of blocks than to sit in a car waiting for the lights to change, you know. And I love the fact, too, that we're going to have that tunnel and use that tunnel that already exists under the freeway so that people from the north side can access the south side of the city. That will be great. So I'm thrilled. I just, you know, full speed ahead. And thank you so much. I can make all the findings. But I will say that we haven't come this far to choose an alternative. I want the full thing. So thank you very much.
Well said. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I have two requests about the slides. The first one is I love that CEQA slide. I don't think I've seen that before, and I think CEQA is so confusing and misunderstood. So I would love a copy of that. I think it's one we should use frequently to explain to the community what CEQA is and why it's important. So just kudos to whoever threw that in there. Also, Charmaine, I want you to single-handedly take the helm of rearranging the names of the class 1 through 4 bike lanes, because they don't make sense. They're not in order. They're not in order of, I guess I would say, the proximity of the biker to a vehicle. So it drives me crazy, so just a wish. Take it to whoever it needs to go to. But yeah, thank you for always putting that slide up, because it's hard to remember when they're not in like a logical order. And this was a very, very long process, so I'm very happy to be at this point. I also want to make sure to thank the community members for coming out so long ago. Like, they were a huge, that was one of our most well-attended community workshops, and for good reason. It's the love of being on a bicycle is a very important trait here, and so I love that all of our community kind of came out with surveys and at the workshops to be a part of this. So just want to say thank you to them as well. And you know, I won't reiterate particularly the safety piece, which is huge about this. My council members have said that very eloquently, but I do want to say that I always, no matter what we do, I always bring it back to our climate action and adaptation plan and the goals we're trying to meet in really reducing our climate footprint, and having a robust bike system is such a big part of that goal. And so I love that this really on so many different levels hits the goals of our climate action and adaptation plan. So thank you for all you've done on that side of it. And again, thank you for coordinating with our neighbors, because I think that's a very important piece of this. I'm able to make all of the findings and excited to move this along.
Great. Thank you. A lot of what I wanted, is very eloquently said by the council members, but I do feel that if we build it, they will come. We have a very active bicycle community here already, and I think that it was really a lot of good foresight by former Mayor Elise Buckley-Weber and Councilmember Anstead and Mayor Pro Tem Klein-Lopez to get this started. And I know this has been many, many years. So thank you for the work on this. I can make all the findings. I'm excited to move forward with this, get people out of their cars, encourage active transportation, and make our city more active and safer. So I can make all the findings. And with that, I will call for a motion and a second to adopt a resolution number 26-2130, comma, 26-2131, and 26-2132. Will the makers of the motion and the second state your names?
City Councilman. Oh, go ahead.
Councilmember Anderson, in honor of Elise Buckley-Weber, who is my mentor, moves.
City Councilman Chris Anstead seconds.
Thank you. I will now defer to the city clerk for roll call.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Anstead,
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Klein-Lopez.
Aye.
Mayor Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Wolf, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. Moving on to discussion/action item number 6. Our next item is to conduct a pre-screen review of a proposed sign ordinance amendment. I will now defer to Community Development Director Robbie Nesevic for the staff presentation. Robbie, take it away.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. So tonight I'll be discussing a proposed pre-screen review of a sign ordinance amendment. Before I get started, I just kind of wanted to explain to everybody in the room what a pre-screen review actually is. So when a applicant wants to move forward with an amendment to the city's municipal code or general plan, that's what's called a legislative amendment. And so really it's up to the discretion of the City Council to approve those applications. And so in order to kind of feel out what the opinions of the City Council are before moving forward with a formal application, an applicant can submit something called a pre-screen application to get non-binding feedback from the City Council. So with that, tonight I'll be going over the project background, the sign ordinance amendment request, and next steps. So as background, AHO-2023-002 was approved on April 23rd, 2024, and that project entitled a 278-unit apartment building with a parking garage, over 5,000 square feet of existing and new commercial space, and 2 monument signs. It's important to note that the 2 monument signs meet the existing code. However, now the developer, who's Greystar, is proposing a new wall sign along the roadside drive frontage, and that particular wall sign does not meet the code as it's currently written, because wall signs are not currently permitted for multifamily uses. So, the applicant is proposing to amend AHMC section 9655.8, which would allow 1 wall sign subject to the following limitations, which are mirrored after the existing commercial signage size limitations. So it would allow 1 square foot of signage per linear foot of primary building frontage, or 50 to 70 square feet maximum, depending on the project's proximity to the roadway. Also, if the building is directly adjacent to the highway, a multi-family development would be able to have a 25-foot freeway-facing sign which could be increased to 50 square feet in lieu of a sign on a primary frontage. So that is what is proposed. It's important to note that if they moved forward with this, wall signs would still be required to comply with lighting regulations. So for this particular project in the AVSB, that would be 3,000 Kelvin, which is the temperature of the lighting, and then for the brightness, it would be an average luminance of 300 candelas per meter squared. And so the applicant provided us with a few renderings just to kind of see what this would look like visually. So on the screen is a rendering from Roadside Drive looking southeast. This is with no signage, and this is what the project currently would look like as it is approved. And this is Roadside Drive looking southeast with the signage. You can see it's a little bit hard to see because it's a little far away, but the Bellamy apartment sign on the middle of that facade. And I'll move it back and forth again so you can kind of see where that signage is. And this is a visual from Roadside Drive looking southwest. Again, this is with no signage. This one's going to be kind of hard to see as well. It's a little bit far away, but this is also with the proposed signage. And so, pretty quick presentation, but next steps, the City Council will provide non-binding feedback to the applicant. And then after that, the applicant will determine whether to move forward with a formal zoning ordinance amendment application. The applicant is also in the room tonight so that he can speak to any questions that you may have as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you if you have any questions.
Thank you, Robbie. And as he stated, before we move on to the applicant's presentation, do any council members have any questions on the staff presentation? I contact first with Councilmember Sylvester.
Thank you. Can you just give me some history on our sign ordinance? Because we have never had signs on residential, and that has always been part of the character of our city, correct?
That's correct. We don't currently allow signs on the wall of multifamily uses, but we do allow monument signs that are affixed to the ground.
No, I understand the monument signs. I mean, I'm just thinking of the residential senior care facility on the north side of the freeway by Canaan. And that is a large complex, and there are no signs visible on that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And has anybody ever asked us before to change our signs?
That I'm not aware of for this particular request. We do receive some requests from commercial businesses asking about potential wiggle room on size and things like that. But as far as multifamily uses, I'm not aware of any.
So we have never done that before. Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, that was one of my questions, so thank you. So the Oakmont has no signage, they have monument signs. And then the apartments by Chesbro, they're I would say the newest complexes.
Same thing.
So they have monument signs and no wall signs, okay. Other signs that are facing the freeway, like LA Fitness, Marriott, those, because they're commercial, they're allowed to have wall signs?
That's correct.
Okay. And then my other question is, the language in the report, is that our language that we wrote up, or was that their proposed language that they, like, who wrote this?
That was submitted by the applicant, and staff reviewed it and made some comments and slight tweaks, but ultimately submitted by the applicant.
Okay. Okay. I think that's it for now for questions. Thank you.
No more questions from council. At this time, I'd like to call up the applicant. You and your representative will have a total of 15 minutes for your presentation. Please note that when the yellow light appears, you will have 1 minute to conclude your presentation. Please adjust the microphone and begin your presentation whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Mayor Wolf and honorable members of the council. I won't take up the full 15 minutes of your time. My name is Steve Martin. I'm with Greystar. I am the lead developer here for the project, Bellamy Agoura Hills. Robbie, thanks for putting that up. I want to first say we started this project about a year ago, and it's been a pleasure to work here in the city and with staff. I think it's been a great project thus far, and we are very excited to complete it towards the end of the summer next year. Turning our attention to the sign, the ordinance, and this resolution, our goal here with this project is just to build a community that everyone here in this room can be pleased with and happy with, and that we can all be proud of here in the city of Agoura Hills. And from our perspective, this sign is a big part of making that a pleasing community aesthetically. You'll see in the difference between the rendering without a sign and the rendering with a sign, there's no pop, there's no aesthetic, kind of aesthetically pleasing aspect of this version compared to the other version. And in fact, you know, it's not much of a big difference besides giving that pop of color that we found is something that communities appreciate. And so for similar projects that I've built in the past, we've done signs like this, and they've been very well received within communities like this one. And so we kind of just want to provide that same opportunity for this project, for everyone to appreciate and love this view from the north side of our building. One thing I'll say about what's been done in the past versus what we're asking here, you know, we see this project as really no different from any of the commercial buildings that were referenced before in terms of how they could benefit from signage like this. And you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the omission of wall signage in the code for a project like this wasn't 100% intentional. It's more like there aren't many projects like this in the city. And I think a consideration for this wall sign will go a long way in ensuring that more beautiful projects like this can be built in the future within the city, and that we and other developers can build a great relationship here with the city. So like I said, I won't take the full 15 minutes, but I really appreciate your consideration and the opportunity to speak here before you today.
Thank you so much. Before we move on to public comments, do any council members have any questions of the applicant? I don't see any. I think you're good to go back. Thank you. I will now defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you. We did not receive any written correspondence, nor do we have any speaker cards.
Okay, thank you. Normally, this time is allocated for the applicant's rebuttal. You will have 5 minutes if you wish to speak. Do you wish to add anything else? No. Well, so there's no public comments, so there's no rebuttal. I apologize. Any further questions of the applicant or staff from the council? Mayor Pro Tem Klein-Lopez.
Just one question for staff. We don't prohibit wall signs, we just don't mention it in the code. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's silent.
Okay, thank you. And when it's silent, that means it's prohibited?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
No more questions. So now I announce that staff is requesting the City Council review the proposed sign ordinance amendment and provide non-binding feedback to the applicant. So it says now, does any council member wish to speak? But I think I know that we probably do, so I'll start with Council Member Anderson.
So I want to thank you for coming out tonight. I want to thank you for working so well with our city staff. And you can't get what you don't ask for, so I absolutely respect that you are asking for this, and we're being asked to give advice. My advice or the thoughts on this is no. And I recognize that other communities have welcomed this, that the pop of color, I certainly appreciate that, but it's a pop of color with illumination and a wall sign. We're the very definition of a bedroom community here in Agoura Hills that likes its small little niche businesses too. And I don't see myself being in favor of adding a legislative amendment that would allow wall signs on multifamily units.
Thank you. I'll move to Councilmember Anstead.
I think my feedback is we've recently redone our sign ordinance earlier, and we tried to take into consideration a lot of different items when we changed the sign regulations earlier. And I feel like if we were to make the amendment that you're requesting, then others that have been other projects that we have ongoing in the city, we would have to make changes for them to allow the signs as well. And so we would increase signage here in the city by quite a bit, especially for the size of the sign that you're requesting on this amendment. So my thoughts is that it doesn't really go along with our city to have a gigantic sign. We try to limit, and there was a lot of protest and a lot of consternation even with the LA Fitness whenever they were going up with their signage, and they're supposed to put up a lot of more landscaping and other things that when they built that facility. And so my inclination is that I would not be open to really opening up our sign ordinance, and I would vote no as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Pro Tem Klein-Lopez.
Thank you. Just a little bit of history. Before we were incorporated, we were part of unincorporated Los Angeles County, and all of the billboards that you see along the freeway were installed at that point before we were a city, and they're grandfathered in, and it is a huge topic for our residents. It's one of the top things people ask me as a council member is how do we get rid of those billboard signs? And I have to explain that, you know, they're grandfathered in and very, very difficult to get rid of them. So just setting the stage that signage in general is a very sensitive topic for us. And I was on the committee with our dear colleague Elise Buckley-Weber redoing our sign ordinances. And I have to say, and I'm looking at you, City Manager Hamburger, it was one of the more traumatizing jobs I ever had to do. It's so hard because it's so subjective, and the kelvins and the lighting and the red, I mean the yellow versus the white, it was hard. And we spent a really, really, really long time on it. And so I have a little PTSD on that. So I don't remember this ever coming up in our discussions when we redid the sign ordinance as even a thought. I think just because it really is it was so far outside of our thought process in terms of adding signage. I agree with you that it's actually small, and I don't think it's particularly overwhelming, but I think the danger is the precedent setting that we've never had wall signs like that. So I think that if we were to change it would be a bigger discussion that we would need to do separately and not just for one project. So, you know, I think that, well, first of all, I don't think you're going to have any problem renting these units. There's so much demand for units like that I don't think it's a marketing issue. And I think that if it is a visual issue, I think there are other ways that you can make it pop. I think there are other ways that you can maybe work with staff on articulation or materials or colors or ways that, you know, if you feel that wall is really bare, that maybe there are other ways to remedy that. But I think that if we were going to allow this change in our sign ordinance, I think we would have to separate it from this property and make it a bigger discussion. I don't think that my fellow council members want to reopen that, but if they did, that's what I would say. I would say we'd have to take it separate from this. So those would be my comments, my leanings on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Sylvester.
Well, first, I'd like to thank you for being brave enough to come here tonight. I don't think you realize you were touching the third rail in this city with signs. So I'm sure you're not surprised by the feedback that you're getting. You know, people here hate the billboards. They hate all the illuminated signs. So it's not a road I think we want to go down. So thank you for trying, but my advice would be no. Thanks.
Thank you, council member. And echoing the articulate comments from my council members, but Agoura Hills was founded really on billboards and the signage. And as Mayor Pro Tem Klein-Lopez said, this is exactly why we went through our really rigorous sign ordinance. So I do appreciate you coming here tonight, and as Councilmember Anderson said, you don't get what you don't ask for. But it's not a precedent that I'm ready to move forward with, and people do know that the building is there. That's not an issue. It's so right now that it's not something I'd be comfortable moving forward with. So I think the direction from council is pretty clear, and I do appreciate you coming and working with our staff. With that, no formal action is required by the City Council on this item, and we'll now move on with the agenda. Thank you. Our next item is discussion-action item number 7. It is the discussion to consider approval of the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, CWPP. I will now defer to Assistant City Manager Adeva for the staff presentation. Ramiro, it's all you.
Thank you. Well, good evening, Mayor Wolf and honorable council members. So I'm extremely proud to be here tonight with our team of staff and consultants to present the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, otherwise known as the CWPP, for your approval consideration tonight. This is the culmination of a 2-phase, multi-year effort that has resulted in the document before you tonight that I believe provides a solid foundation and springboard for increasing wildfire resilience citywide. Before we get started, I'd like to personally thank our project consultants at Jensen Hughes who are here tonight. We have Amelia, Paulina, and Dave. They've been great partners through both phases of this effort, as they were also responsible for preparing the Community Wildfire Risk Assessment and now the Community Wildfire Protection Plan. I also want to send a special shout out to a couple of some other partners, the Agoura Hills Fire Safe Council. I see Peter Feller in the audience. The Santa Monica Mountains Fire Safe Council, LA County Fire Department, LA County Sheriff's Department, MRCA, Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy, California State Parks, SCE, and even the Community Brigade, and I see Mr. Crutcher out there as well. Your contributions are not unnoticed, and they're super invaluable and greatly appreciated, so thank you so much. All right, so that said, I'd also be remiss if I did not acknowledge that funding for this effort was through CAL FIRE's Wildfire Prevention Grants Program. Okay, so what is a CWPP? It stands for Community Wildfire Protection Plan, that builds on the Community Wildfire Risk Assessment, the CWRA, which was the plan that preceded this effort and was used as the basis for preparing the CWPP. In a nutshell, the CWRA identified the vulnerabilities and risks for the city, and the CWPP are actionable items to address those vulnerabilities and risks related to wildfire threats. A big benefit that comes from having a CWPP in place is that it increases funding opportunities for the city and puts us in a prime position for dollars that can go towards implementation of the plan. This exhibit shows the planning area of the CWPP, which aligns with the city boundary, as shown with the dashed line, and the highlighted area in the middle being the area that makes up the city. I will now pass the presentation to Communications Manager Mary Haddad.
Thank you, Ramiro. Honorable Mayor and City Council, in this portion of the presentation, we're going to be going over the development process of the CWPP, as well as the engagement that went into it from the community and our agency working group that Miro just shouted out a few organizations who were a part of that. Here you have a snapshot of what the process looked like. It really mirrors the CWRA's process, where there was a survey, a public survey that began very early on, multiple meetings with the consultants, stakeholder engagement with the agency working group that we'll dive into, and community workshops, which were a significant part of the final draft, and now where we are tonight, where we're seeking approval and final signature. So who participated in the development of the CWPP? Really the key core working group that had the day-to-day oversight was the city, of course, our partners at Jensen Hughes, and LA County Fire Department at our local station. But in addition to that, a huge, significant portion of feedback was contributed by the stakeholder working group, which included all of the agency logos that you see up there that Ramiro also mentioned. But we also want to give a big thank you to the community and everybody who was very involved in that process, either through a survey or a community workshop. We had great turnout at our workshops. I would say maybe triple than we did during the CWRA process. As people were becoming more and more familiar with this process, they became more and more involved, which we love to see. Our public workshop for the CWPP was on St. Patrick's Day. We joke it was our lucky day because we had about 65 people in attendance, which is great for this kind of workshop. People were very engaged, asking great questions, providing their feedback. And then in addition to that, following the workshop, we launched a comment period within the CWPP's website, on our city website, where people who preferred a digital method were providing feedback. In total, we received 106 public comments, which were incorporated into the draft, and our consultants at Jensen Hughes will go over that process. And I'd be remiss not to mention the amazing contributions of the ad hoc committee, which consists of Councilmember Sylvester and Councilmember Anderson, who also met with staff and the consultants to provide their feedback, which was a huge part of the process. So thank you for that. And then continuous website updates. We got many posts out on social media to continue keeping people updated on the process. And then we also took advantage of community events during the timeline over the course of the last few months to provide flyers at City Hall, the Event Center, library, and our usual communications methods. So we're grateful to everybody who was involved in that process. I'm going to turn it over to Jensen Hughes for an overview.
Hi, that should be me. So I'm David Kerr. I'm a subcontractor with Jensen Hughes. Mostly experienced 33 years of wildland fire in Southern California with the Forest Service, and used to be the fire chief at Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area back in 2000, 2001. So a little bit of familiarity with the local area. So if we could go to the next slide for the overview. So the way the CWPP is organized, and a lot of you have seen this before, was 5 sections, but to me the most important for the council to take a look at is the action plan and the recommendations. The other sections are excellent information. They're supportive of what is leading into the action plan and the recommendations. But I look at section 4 as a tear out that you can take as a guide to what needs to be done on the ground. So these recommendations that come into the action plan were based on 2 primary factors. This is a fire frequency analysis of where fires have burned and recorded fire history in the Agoura Hills area. So we can go back and we can take a look at the fire frequency in the areas down by Liberty Canyon. That area has burned 12 times in recorded fire history. So a fire return interval of a little less than 10 years on average for that particular piece of ground. So when we go back and think about the Woolsey fire in 2018, we're starting to push a threshold where you could reasonably expect it to see fire traveling in that area again. And a lot of that is tied to this primary fire corridor of Las Virgenes Canyon. It's where fires like to come out of the Simi Hills and they like to run into Malibu, and Las Verges is one of the major fire flow paths. So we take a look at the fire frequency, and then we marry that with the fire hazard, which is basically just a agglomeration of factors that influence the intensity of the fire. So when fire hazard is overlaid with fire frequency, if we go back one, please, we come back to this, what is a conglomerate of a risk analysis for the area. And basically what it shows us is fairly similar with what we saw in fire frequency, was that Liberty Canyon sticks out there at the bottom, highlighted in red, as an area where hazard and risk kind of align and would be an area of priority treatments for the community. So we took a look at the community itself and ended up basically dividing it into 3 sections. So the area south of the 101 freeway, and then if you look at the area north of the 101 freeway, there's a east of Canaan and a west of Canaan. So when we get farther into the action plan, that's how the plan itself is set up, just to provide a little bit of clarity so you're not looking at the entire city at one time. So the next one. So hazard and risk around Agoura takes a lot of formats. You have small enclaves inside the city with flammable vegetation. You can think of areas around Media Creek, which is natural vegetation, but you can also look at areas like Forest Cove Park, which has vegetation under surrounding the park area that could actually present a hazard to some of the structures that are immediately adjacent to the park. You have large areas of open space. You have flammable issues with non-native and landscape vegetation that's within the home ignition zone of many of the residences. We have issues with access in and out, narrow roads, poor turning radiuses in the driveways, particularly when you start getting into Chesborough Canyon, the top of Foothill Road, some of the private sections of roadway up in that particular area have very difficult access for fire apparatus. We can come around to areas south of the 101 where there you have very, very tight access, roadside parking that limits the availability of fire equipment potentially to get through and access structures in that particular area. So there's a variety of different elements that provide hazard and risk to Agoura Hills. And the idea of trying to address that is what we proposed with a series of community-wide, but also site-specific recommendations. So if we could go to the next one. This would be the priority recommendations for the area. One more, Romero. So this is a simplified look at the 39 recommendations, site-specific. Some of them are spatially extensive enough where they could be mapped. Some of them are site-specific where it'd be no more than a dot on the map. So when we look at the large purple polygon in the upper northwest corner of the proposal, this is a large area, about 247 acres, that could potentially be treated. We had a conversation with Chief Smith with LA County Fire, who has a potential interest in going in there, but you're looking at multiple landowners. You're looking at Las Virgenes Water District, Rancho Simi has land up there, the Conservancy has land. So we have multiple partners that would need to come together for implementation on that. Some of the smaller areas you look at are single landowners. They might be much simpler to prioritize and to implement projects that are just based on single landowners. So one of the requirements of a community wildfire protection plan is that we set priorities for treatments. So when we set the priorities, we did it not based on project specific, but the general areas. And the general areas of south of the 101 freeway surfaced out as the highest priority for treatment. The area to the north of the freeway and to the east of Canaan was the second highest priority, and then the area to the west of Canaan was the third level priority. But much as with your bicycle plan, some of the projects are going to be easy to implement, some of the projects are going to be more complex and more difficult to implement. So when it comes to priority setting, always look at what are the projects that are most shovel ready. Which ones could be done with the limited amount of impacts, with the limited amount of resources that are available, which ones could happen in a reasonable time frame, and which ones will take more planning action to pull together. So while we provide priorities in the plan, my recommendation to the city is that you look at what can be done, what's feasible, what can be done now, and then move forward using those as your priority, and then work at some of the more complex projects with multiple landowners, permitting requirements, environmental studies potentially required. Those would be projects that would require time to onboard. They have great value, but they're just going to take time to bring into fruition.
Thank you, Dave, for that. Good evening, Mayor Wolf and members of the City Council. My name is Paulina. I'm a wildfire risk mitigation consultant with Jensen Hughes. Thank you so much for having us. So my portion of the slides are going to talk about the more community-wide recommendations that are included in the CWPP. So as you can see on the slide there, we have about 10 categories that have across 46 actions. So we have 10 categories that range from codes and enforcements, fuels mitigation, property protection as respect to defensible space, and home hardening, wildfire resiliency critical infrastructure, public notification and communications, evacuation planning and preparedness, public education and awareness, partnerships, collaboration, coordination, and emergency response. So ultimately, the recommendations are really intended to serve as a roadmap for implementation, helping the city and its partners to identify and focus where future planning can take place for things like funding and identifying projects for future funding as well. So we talked a lot about hazards and risks that we've identified in Agoura. So now sort of the goal is to move from understanding those risks to taking more meaningful coordinated action that overall helps Agoura Hills become more wildfire resilient. If we go into the next slide, so these are priority actions that were identified through an exercise that was coordinated with the agency working group, so the group members that Mary highlighted earlier. And ultimately, the agency working group had the exercise to sort of identify projects that were important, feasible, and practical for the city to advance. So these are just some examples. This is not an exhaustive list, but examples that were identified, and you can find the sort of list in Appendix F of the CWPP report that goes into more detail about that. But ultimately, some of the themes that kind of came out were related to emergency communication, also around public education and bringing community awareness, field treatment and vegetation management, as well as other implementation priorities that might have to do with things around code updates, insurance coordination, improving the cost efficiency for fuel reduction, et cetera. So I think together with these priorities, it's a useful starting point for the city to reference in future application for grant funding. So yeah, so now I will transition it back to Ramiro, who will close this out. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Paulina. Okay, so next steps, pending council approval tonight, as the document mentions in Chapter 8, the implementation and monitoring process would consist of forming an advisory committee, which we're imagining would be pretty much a carryover of the agency working group, all the wonderful organizations and folks that we mentioned earlier, and then developing a set cadence of meetings so that there's definitely some frequency that is consistent to be able to have these conversations about what to implement, and then that's going to open us up for seeking funding for implementation of the plan. So exciting next steps pending approval by the council tonight, and that concludes our presentation, and we're all here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that detailed report. And before we move to public comments, I'm going to turn to council questions, and I'm going to start with, do council members have questions? Because if we do, I will defer to the committee members first. Councilmember Sylvester Anderson.
I don't really have questions because we've been talking all the time. So okay. I have the answers. I just want to move on.
Okay.
And get it done.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that place too. I've got leading questions that I can ask, but I will just make them as comments as opposed to leading questions.
Okay, I did see Councilmember Anstead. We made eye contact first.
I definitely have a couple questions. And the questions revolve more around the recommendations like we just talked about. I guess I need to know, and I don't know if I look at the city manager or if I look at who on this explanation, but I understand that we might have to wait for funding on some of these actions, but a lot of these actions are just like coordinating with state and national parks on creating a plan of action around fire breaks and things like that. How are we going to prioritize which ones we're going to do first going forward once we adopt this plan? And are we going to have like quarterly or every 6-month updates to the city council? Because I think, I consider this, I know all my other city council members do as well, to be a very important plan for our city. So just want to ask you kind of how we're going to go about this.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Anstead. And yes, there are a lot of moving pieces to implementation of this plan. As you mentioned, I think that the advisory committee is going to be that group that does meet with that frequency and is able to look at, depending on the council priorities and then also the funding that's available, that'll help to determine which ones of these are sort of those low-lying fruit items that can start to gain momentum sooner than some of the others. As far as updating the council, that absolutely can and most likely will happen. Especially since we have a set frequency of these meetings, there'll definitely be the need to probably report back to the council and also receive maybe further direction on whether certain priorities remain the priorities based on certain funding that might be available at certain times. We're already beginning to look at funding opportunities as we speak. So that can shape the whole landscape of how this thing is implemented. But that's really the beauty of this plan, is that it's sort of a list of high-level starting points. And a lot of those are dictated, again, by the council's priorities and then the funding that's available.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. I think part of the challenge with these analyses is we do have so many different landowners, and I'm not talking about obviously individual homeowners, but even our homeowners associations own land that back up into more of the fire-prone areas. And even when it comes to us landscaping medians, sometimes there's real confusion about who owns what and who has the responsibility to maintain those areas. So my first question is, do we have a comprehensive map or understanding of who owns those most vulnerable places within the city? And I'm talking really specifically about HOAs, because they were created so long ago before we were an incorporated city, and I know there's not always clear data on that. So in terms of land ownership, do we have that information clearly, or is it up for more investigation?
So yes, Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez, the short answer to that is yes, we do. We actually have a GIS layer that I would say is that actually connected and updated to the county assessor's property information. And so every year or so, I think we marry the two together to make sure that the ownership information is carried over into the GIS layer. And so it's literally a matter of just opening up our software, clicking on a property, and understanding who owns it.
So were those property owners like HOAs, how involved were they in this process?
They were invited to all of the community engagements. They were also sent the surveys individually via email, and we saw some good representation of them at the community workshop. Can't list off the top of my head who, but there was quite a few HOA presidents who were there.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, when I read through particularly the appendices with the I've got one open right now, vegetation treatment prescriptive guidelines. There seems to be obviously evolving science on wildfire management, and I've experienced that these different agencies don't always agree on the best, on those guidelines. So, you know, are prescribed burns good or bad? Is over clearance harmful, too harmful, things like that. And so what is your experience with these groups on actually, were there guidelines that were agreed upon, or is this going to be an issue moving forward where there may not be consensus on some of the recommendations, or I should say how to implement some of the recommendations? I think you can say, hey, clear the flammable things from your, from your home or this or that, but when it comes to brush clearance and things like that, there seems to be some disagreement out there.
Yeah, I can go ahead and try to start and see if I leave something out, Jensen Hughes. But I would say, Mayor Pro Tem, that there definitely is going to, I don't think we're going to fix there being differences of opinions on what technically should be done to mitigate or implement some of these mitigation measures. What I would say is that during the process of preparing this plan, and then definitely in the implementation portion with the advisory committee, the fire department and first responders are at the table. And so I think ultimately it's been the general consensus, at least in the experience I've seen in just the preparation of this plan, that there may be different thoughts and views on how implementation should be, but ultimately we look to the fire department professionals to really tell us what the preferred method should be, and typically we go in that direction.
Great, thank you. Okay, my next question is, obviously to implement much of this is going to cost a lot of money, and I know we have grants. I know we will go out for grants. We're very good at that, and we are usually successful in bringing home the dollars. But in terms of council goals, if we look at this before our next council goal setting session, and we say we want to, pick these top issues, start to pick them off, particularly the shovel-ready or the low-hanging fruit, whatever you want to call it. Would it be, is it a capital improvement plan? It's not really capital. Like where does this go? Where does this go if we as a council decide to, when we decide to jump in on some of these implementation recommendations?
Mayor Pro Tem, I don't believe that it necessarily they'd all be capital projects, just because like brush clearance or coordination.
I'm talking more about like to pull out trees and replant with things that are native. That is really expensive, and as we know, very sensitive to our community that are used to seeing trees. You can't just take them out. So that's I think I'm referring to the things that are costly, like that.
Yeah, I think with the directive from council, and it would be a discussion item that we'd bring to the council. And I think the advisory committee can bring some of those recommendations, and then the council can weigh in on those and any others that are on the list. And I think with the direction of council, we can go, whether we find grant fund money or we include it in our budget, we have those options in front of us. Sometimes we have special funds that we can utilize depending on what it is. So we'll look at all those options and have that discussion with the council, and we can do that throughout our budget process.
Okay, great. And then my last question was really, I know we have all those partners at the table, but again, back to kind of the same question as the bicycle master plan. What happens when we hit the border of Agoura Hills? Obviously, fires don't care, disasters don't care about our borders. Where are our neighbors in this process, and how do we coordinate with them so that we're not, wasting resources, doing this 5 times over in our COG? Where can we find these economies of scale with our neighbors that are in our council of governments?
Yeah, first let me say that I know that there have been other surrounding agencies that are actually looking at us as leaders in this space. So that's a good thing. I commend the council and the community for really putting this forward. As far as coordination, that again goes back to the advisory committee. And when we're sitting in those groups, recognizing who are the appropriate players to have at that table, in addition to the agency working group stakeholders that were a part of this process. That's, Mayor Pro Tem, where I think that would come out, identifying who needs to be there and why, and then taking the active approach of reaching out and making sure they're at the table as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Some of my questions are, can you talk me through what some of the community involvement will be once, or if this is passed tonight? What does that look like? And is there anything besides the advisory committee for community input and engagement? And education.
I would say it's going to be ongoing. Definitely. We're planning to get an update out even tomorrow to let people know that this was approved, to give them another chance to look at the finalized document and continue that engagement. Depending on, I know one thing in the agency working group that, to Mayor Pro Tem's point, there is a lot of differing priorities, but one thing that everybody, and I'm sure Peter and Jay can vouch for this too, is that we agreed on was the communications piece. Some of that low-hanging fruit on things that we can get out now, making people aware of their plans, their evacuation zones, things like that are ongoing, things we already started, but just want to put more of an emphasis on. So I think for that, it's just going to be an ongoing process as we kind of lay out the plan with the advisory group and the council, and then just keep the community updated on what those projects are going to be and how they can continue to stay involved.
And is it safe to say that the advisory committee or the advisory group would be a good mechanism for public engagement through that advisory committee?
I believe, is that advisory group open to, we can open those meetings to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then my next question is similar to what I had for the bike master plan. I think it was outlined, but there's so much in here. How do we decide what we want to do first? And I know that's a lot to do with the council's priorities, but can you just kind of articulate that, what that looks like of how we, if passed, what the implementation hierarchy, I'll use that word again, looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. And Mayor Wolf, it's going to be more of what went behind, I would say, preparing the Appendix F of this report, which was a priority list. And that exercise really entailed getting together at the table, talking with all the stakeholders and figuring out, what was very important. That's going to be an ongoing process. And again, it's going to, yes, like you mentioned, we don't want all the pressure to fall on the council to prioritize that. You're going to be looking to the advisory committee to come to you with recommendations based on certain ththings that are happening. I go back to funding as an example. If there's, we know as an example that we're already looking at funding options and starting to prepare apps and look into apps as we speak. And so I would say that depending on the funding and whether or not we lock in some of this funding, that can help to then look back at this list and sort of, come up with recommended suggestions on how to start implementing parts of this so that ultimately we get it all implemented. So that's kind of how I see that playing out. It's going to be an ongoing process where obviously the implementation of all these 80 or so measures is not going to happen overnight. And so we'll need to have consistent touches as a committee and then consistent touches back with the council to update you on recommendations to move forward with.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for answering that. It's something else that's included vaguely, and I know we're looking at the the CWPP for the city of Agoura Hills, but there's so much data in here that shows really the ignition points for the city. What I was hoping is that, or maybe you can answer this, is there a way that in this plan we can work on maybe better communication or coordination with the land agencies such as the National Park Service and the MRCA, who own the majority of the open space where the ignition zones historically start? How can we really implement that and vegetation management in those zones which are outside the city, which I understand, but with the data here, how can we make sure that that is included in this plan?
Can I ask Jensen Hughes to weigh in on that? Maybe that coordination of how that takes place outside the city boundaries?
Sure. During the development of the plan, I had conversations with Mike Wilson at National Park Service. He's Fire Management Prevention Officer there. So Mike's aware of the proposals that would have a nexus to federal property in Chesborough Canyon. So Mike would be the point of contact to bring into discussions on what can the park afford to do, what meets their agency direction on what they're willing to do, and then are there ways to partner, because MRCA is a landowner in that same piece of ground, are there ways to partner with the other landowners there that can build a fire resilient set of projects along Chesborough Canyon Road. So they've been aware. MRCA is in the room tonight. MRCA was a very willing partner all through the process as far as developing some of the proposal areas. They gave us feedback on when some of the land, when some of the treatment polygons were laid out, they came back and wanted to get clarity on kind of what was the thought process, what were we trying to do in this particular treatment zone. So MRCA is a willing partner. They have different land management directions than, say, Los Angeles County Fire will, but they are a partner that's willing to work with the fire agencies to come up with plans. Your Ventura County Fire Department's always been a very proactive vegetation management fire department, and Chief Smith with Los Angeles County Fire, the assistant chief for Agoura Hills, is also comes from a very strong vegetation management background. He used to be our X1 with the county, who led their vegetation management program for the county. So Chief Smith's a very willing partner to get things done. There's simple things that can get coordinated with the county for work, not necessarily just exclusively on city property, but also state responsibility areas, which are their basically CAL FIRE's representative to treat those areas. So Chief Smith's a willing partner. They have equipment, they have crews. They need to be engaged, and they need to understand how they can help the city create a more resilient environment. And Drew, or Chief Smith, sorry, I've known him way too long now, but Chief Smith was also part as far as the development of the site-specific treatment polygons. So Chief Smith's aware of what's in this plan, and he's very supportive to leverage some of the county resources to do this work.
Thank you for that very detailed answer. So I just want to, and that was really helpful, but I do want to reiterate, so it is safe to say that some of that coordination is included in this plan.
Yeah, unfortunately, the easy part is writing the plan. The hard part is implementing the plan.
Absolutely.
Because there are so many varying partners that are involved here around the Agoura Hills. It's not as simple as going to the Angeles National Forest and doing a project, or the Los Padres Forest and doing a project. You're dealing with multiple agencies, each with different land management directions. Sometimes it's very difficult to skin a cat when you give 6 people a knife and 1 animal.
No, absolutely, and that's why the question was raised. So thank you for that answer. Yes, please, Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez.
So, Dave, I just want to follow up on your phrasing of different land management directives, because it goes back to my question of what happens when there's not agreement, as there seems to not be these days, with some of those land management standards, because it sounds like there's going to be obviously a group of experts in the room, but who or how ultimately are those directives going to be reconciled so that we don't have different practices in the various parts touching our city or even within the city? That's my biggest concern these days as we reel from some of the major fires in the area, is that there just doesn't seem to be as much consensus as I wish there were.
Yeah, correct. I mean, having worked for the Park Service, I understand that they can be reticent on doing large-scale vegetation management projects. Their goal is to preserve and study, and that's the direction in their originating documents. So, but when you look at highly disturbed land masses like Chesborough Canyon, which is full of exotic grasses, they've been open in the past to doing prescribed burns in some areas to look at, can we control mustard? And, you know, by going in and burning mustard early in the season before it sets seeds to try to limit the amount of reproduction that you get on this site to try to deal with non-native species. They're very open to removing any sort of non-native trees that are in the area. So things like Aleppo pine, oleander, Italian cypress, anything that would be a nexus to federal land that's a non-native would be an easy sell for the Park Service. MRCA's, you know, as a state agency, is a little bit under the direction of the governor's office to increase vegetation management activities. So there may be some sort of direction coming from Sacramento towards state agencies that would make them potentially more willing or even a funding source for doing vegetation treatment. But the coordination with multiple landowners and multiple entities will never be easy. Even in HOAs, when you look around Strawberry Hill, I mean, they have a series of non-native pines that are planted immediately behind their parking structures and some of their buildings. You know, you have leverage through Peter and the Agoura Hills Fire Safe Council to contact that particular HOA. They may not even be aware that they have an issue with their non-native vegetation. There may be options for them just through HOA funding to treat units like that. So there's multiple options and there's multiple individuals that are going to have to drive the process to get implementation onto the ground. And yeah, it's not an easy process, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Yes, David, knowing that there are all these multiple agencies who will never agree, don't you think our best move forward is to focus on what we can control, which is working on the home hardening and you know, clearing the areas around individual homes, so that, because really those wildfires are out there. Once those embers fly ahead of the Tower of Flames, it becomes an urban conflagration. We're not talking about a wildfire anymore. We're talking about building to buildings igniting each other. So for us, where we can control would be the home hardening and the clearance around our homes. And we should put our focus there initially. Would you agree?
I agree, and some of it may just be education, because there are, the public resource codes require, you know, a certain level of defensible space around structures. So enforcement of defensible space ordinances and potentially working with LA County Fire on inspections and enforcement might be a tool that you could use to leverage additional work in the home hardening zones, but also offering services like a community chipper program.
Yes.
Where Los Angeles County could bring their chippers to particular sites. People could do the work on their home ignition zone and have a chipper available to dispose of.
Or we could have chipper parties, you know, in neighborhoods.
It's
yes.
a useful way to show citizens that, you know, we don't expect you to do everything and pay everything yourself. We're trying to leverage these relatively cheap and free resources to do work that you're required to do by law anyways.
Right, and then another area we can focus on would be evacuations. I gave Ramiro this afternoon the Topanga evacuation manual, which I think is brilliant, and I think that's something we could create in our own city to educate on how to best evacuate. Would you agree? That's another low-hanging fruit.
My understanding that that's an ongoing process with the city currently, is to look at evacuations.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I will now defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you. We did receive a written correspondence from Jay Crutcher, Agoura Hills, and we do have two speakers, Jay Crutcher followed by Peter Feller.
Welcome. You know the drill. You have 3 minutes to speak. There's no green light, but your time begins when you start speaking. When the yellow light appears, you'll have 30 seconds to finish before the light turns red and your time is up. Please adjust the microphone and you may begin whenever you're ready.
Good evening. The Sandy Fire in Simi Valley last week was a shock to our community. It resurfaced wounds and trauma even for those who didn't lose a home or a loved one in the Palisades, Eaton, or Woolsey fires. At an intellectual level, the threat to Agoura was minimal because the winds never aimed in our direction, yet many felt a real sense of panic or foreboding. The hills above Simi Valley hadn't burned for decades. Some took that as evidence the area wasn't at risk, while others worried it was overdue and the unaddressed fuel was just getting worse every year. This community wildfire protection plan could not be more timely. It's not perfect by any means. It would have been better if more people had participated in the workshopping and development, if outreach had included school principals, elder care facility management, organizations, and neighboring communities. Some of the stated goals needed to be a bit more concretely explained. However, I urge you to accept this wildfire protection plan and immediately start the conversation about what comes next. Don't let anyone pressure you to go back and start over. There's always an opportunity to implement projects that are not in this plan, and it's inherently a living document intended to be monitored, evaluated, and updated over the next several years. The plan's strength depends on the continued collective action of stakeholders to guide the implementation of projects leading to measurable change. Everyone in this room, or watching online, or reading the Acorn or social media, is a stakeholder. Demand your seat at the table. Come prepared with the ideas and the energy that you will contribute. Bring the people who might not be in this room but should be: faith leaders, educators, equestrians, vulnerable populations, people in Cornell who want to be part of the solution, students. Participatory democracy is a messy thing, but it's better than all the alternatives. For context, Malibu's Public Safety Commission was established in 1998 and meets every month. Westlake Village has a Public Safety Advisory Board with 9 appointed residents and 2 council members. Calabasas has a Public Safety Commission that even includes a designated high school student member. Agoura has a Law Enforcement and Emergency Response Subcommittee that met once this year, 3 times in 2025 and twice in 2024. Let's fix that first, please. The Sandy fire reminded us there's no time to waste. We need to address this problem, talk to each other, and listen to each other. We need to work together to prioritize the 85 projects in the CWPP, delegate accountability, forge new partnerships, find grant funding, and get it done. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Peter Feller.
Good evening, Mayor Jeremy Wolf, honorable council members and staff. For those who don't know me, my name is Peter Feller and I am the president of the Agoura Hills Fire Safe Council. We've been working together for a few years to reach this important evening, when an Agoura Hills CWPP would be presented for the council approval. I thank the city for partnering with us to make this happen. I also wish to thank the Santa Monica Mountains Fire Safe Council and Jensen Hughes for helping us to get to this point. Wildfire is a very real threat to the residents of Agoura Hills. We've had 2 emergency wildfire incidents in the last week, including one today. The Agoura Hills Fire Safe Council fully supports the approval of the CWPP as presented. But I must stress this is just the beginning. As itemized in the CWPP, there's a lot of work to be done. I look forward to our continued partnership in making Agoura Hills safer from wildfire. I also want to compliment the council members on some of the questions and concerns that were brought up this evening. They are very good. I do work very closely with some of the neighboring cities and land management organizations, so I am in constant contact with them. We're trying to look at different ways that we can do things and reduce costs. And you are correct that wildfire defensible space is always very expensive as compared to home hardening. You just have to look at the grants that actually go out there. So thank you very much. Please approve what is being presented this evening, and thank you for the partnership, and good evening. Thank you. That's it.
We have no further speaker cards.
Thank you to the speakers. Really appreciate it. Do any of the council members have any further questions? With that, we'll now move on to deliberations, and I will now start with Council Member Sylvester and then move to Council Member Anderson.
Well, I'm going to keep this very brief. I want this to happen, and I want it to happen quickly, so I hope everybody approves it tonight, so we can move on to the next step. Thank you.
Okay, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a little bit of a yin to your yang. I won't be nearly as brief as that, but I will not go on and on. I agree with everything you said. I want to start with thank yous. Jay and Peter, thank you for all of the work that you have done. Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you in advance for all of the work that you will do. I'll get to that in a minute. I want to thank our partners at Jensen Hughes, Amelia, and Paulina, especially for your patience with my many, many, many dumb questions, and Dave for your guidance throughout all of this. I want to thank our city staff for the phenomenal work that you did, both in supporting us as the advisory council and supporting that advisory working group, whatever we named, basically you guys and all of those partners up there. That was phenomenal. The agency working group. I love this plan. I love that we have this plan. I love that we are a leader in this. It helps us understand our risk, which then gives us a roadmap to figuring out how we get there. I want to make a specific call out for that site-specific recommendations and applaud the involvement of Chief Smith. I'm so glad that we did that. I'm so glad that he has put his time and his thinking into this, and excited about that. And then, I just want to lift up the three themes that went forward. So, this plan has, 30-some recommendations, many, many, many recommendations. And as we all know, you can't do all of them. And I spent a whole lot of time talking to constituents, to my neighbors, to my husband who's super into all of this, about what the priorities are. And that memo that you guys presented with those theme priorities are exactly what I was hearing from folks. So I applaud the wisdom of that group and what you guys did. And just to say it out loud, it's communication. So Mary, so super excited to have you on board. It's making sure that when we have our next emergency, our next wildfire, that the folks in Liberty Canyon aren't going to have this issue of not being able to have it's focusing on all of these things, making sure that one is making sure that when we have an emergency, folks know what to do. The second one, to what Council Member Sylvester was talking about, and Debbie, Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez talked a little bit about too, and Peter and Jay, this is where you guys come in, it's supporting our community groups, our Santa Monica Mountains Firewise Council, our Agoura Hills Firewise Council, the Community Brigade, the CERT, the Arson Watch. There are a lot of folks out there in Agoura Hills who are doing really good work. And that second priority I sort of see as help support all of them so that we as Agoura Hills residents can then do what we need to do, know what we need to do. We need to harden our homes. We need to put those vents. We need to make sure that we don't have mulch too close, all the things, right? So that second priority it's really community organizing in a lot of ways is what we need to do to help then develop that herd immunity to keep those embers from creating a urban conflagration. I think I'm saying that. Conflagration, that's a tough one. Okay, and then the last priority, and it gets to what some of you guys were talking about in terms of the partnerships. It names 5 different partners. We got to all come together. That's going to be its own measure of community organizing around the fuel mitigation outside of the city. So these are all the right things. It was missing something, though I don't blame the group for missing this because it was this other thing in development and you might not have thought to lift it up. But there's a whole section in this wildfire plan, wildfire prevention plan, section G, CW 29 through CW 31 on evacuation. So one of the things that we will do after this, and we'll get to implementation in a second, one of the things that we will do after this is seek to add evacuation in as a high priority. So we need to, I'm really, really glad, and it makes sense, I'm really, really glad that we approved that evacuation plan at our last meeting. What we now need to do is marry those two things and then include evacuation in part of the high priority implementation things that we will be doing. And then last but not least, talking about implementation, so Council Member Sylvester and I have bonded around this and we have talked about this. We plan to stay involved, and maybe it is by we're just going to join this advisory council and roll up our sleeves with the advisory council. Maybe it's continuing in the ad hoc group, but know that Council Member Sylvester and I will continue to be a part of this implementation process. And we are ready to roll up our sleeves and get going on implementing this terrific plan.
Thank you, Council Member. Moving on, Council Member Anstead.
Thank you, Mayor. I think where I want to start is actually where the mayor had some questions earlier around the data. And when I read through this report, it woke me up to the fact that there is a lot of data out there. And in fact, the fire department is already using that data whenever the fire chief is deciding where he's going to deploy his resources, and he's using this modeling that they have, and I'm sure it's AI enhanced modeling now. And that woke me up, and it took a millennial mayor, I think, to point that out from the stage, that it's the data, stupid. I mean, that's really what it is. It's the data, stupid. And the data, you have to think about it in terms of emergencies in our country and what we've done with data in the past. The first thing that I can think about, somebody that comes from Florida originally, is the projection of hurricanes. We know nowadays, because there's been so many hurricanes, and they've gone, basically they follow a certain path, no matter whatever the wind factors and all that they put in there, they can predict basically where landfall is going to make even 2 days out in a hurricane. And nowadays with AI and data, they can also predict where the fire is going to go. And we have lots of data, just like was talked about in this report. There's over 30 to 50 years worth of fires in this area that they can use to overlay, and where we know kind of where the ignition points are going to be and where the fire is going to most likely go going forward. So knowing that, we need to work with our National Park Service, our state park services, and other partners, and we need to try to plan with them in order to make those changes. And so we've got to get out of our thinking. I mean, a lot of myself, and I know a lot of my neighbors, whenever the fire starts, you're always like wondering where it's going to go and which direction it's going to go based on the winds and all that. But we don't have these sophisticated models. And I think that we got to realize that that's where we need to go and utilize the data that we have, and then plan and protect our communities before it gets into the community. But we also need to also do everything we can, if it does get in our community, everything we can possibly do with the home hardening efforts. But I want to try to attack the situation from a city standpoint with working with our partners and trying to bring that modeling out and trying to say, this is where we believe the fires are going to start and where they're going to go. And these are, what are we going to do about it? Now we have this data. And I think that needs to be comprehensively done. I don't think it's been done yet. And I think that we need to do that. And this plan starts us in that area, and now we need to move forward on that going forward. So I'm all for adopting the plan, but I definitely want to see us partner with these national and state agencies and try to move forward with actually implementing this plan going forward. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. In addition to all of the thank yous that you shared with us, I also want to thank the committee for all the hard work. I know this is a particularly important topic for you, Councilmember Sylvester, who, you know, with your knowledge on Zone Zero and all of the relationships you've made with home hardening and defensible space, I think it's a really important piece that you're both bringing to this conversation. So thank you to you both. You've said a lot of it very well. I actually think that once you do, you know, consolidate data, it's really about the funding. I mean, that's really what this is. I think that's what we need to be focusing on once we adopt this wonderful document, which I do agree we should absolutely adopt. I think that a lot of us have the education, and a lot of us want to do the right thing, and a lot of us, really from the city to the agencies to the individual homeowners, would be doing more if we could. And so to me, the most important thing we can do is pass this so that we can get those funding opportunities in front of us and appreciate the priorities, and hope that our future councils will constantly have this in their goal-setting sessions. But for me, it's all about the funding, and so thank you for laying this out so that we know where the dollars can go once we secure them. So ready to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Great work, Councilmember Sylvester and Anderson on this. I know this has been a long time coming, so appreciate the work that you and the staff has put into it. Huge thank you to Peter and Jay. You guys have been critical in this. You've stepped up for our community owes you all a debt. Call for a motion and a second, and this is going to be a mouthful, so give me a second. I see Councilmember Sylvester going, but I will now call for a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation to approve the Community Wildfire Protection Plan and authorize staff to implement the strategies, priorities, and recommendations identified within the CWPP as funding becomes available and based on future City Council direction and priorities. Will the makers of the motion and the second state your name?
Councilmember Sylvester very happily so moves.
Councilmember Anderson also very happily seconds.
I will now defer to the city clerk for roll call.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Councilmember Anstead.
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez.
Aye.
Mayor Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Wolf, you have approval 5-0.
Great. Thank you so much. I am so sorry to our waste management partners who are here and been so patient, but we are going to take a 7-minute break. And that's actually a question I had, so should I allow it? Before we do that, I will turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez to discuss she has a comment for the next two items, for item number 8 and item number 9. I will now turn it over to you before we break.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick announcement. When you return from the break, just want to announce that I will be recusing myself from agenda items 8 and 9 out of an abundance of caution because one of my children will be working for Waste Management. We've analyzed the issue. I do not believe I have a technical conflict of interest because my child is over 18, not a dependent and not a source of income to me under the Political Reform Act. But out of an abundance of caution, I think it's best if I recuse myself, and so I will not be joining you after the break. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so we will now break and we will return at 8:50. That is 6 minutes from right now. Thank you. Another 15 seconds, make sure we're good. Okay, we are continuing now in discussion and action item number 8, and this is an update on the solid waste franchise agreement discussion with Waste Management WM. I will now defer to Assistant City Manager So how about those Dodgers? They won like 15-6 or something?
Does anyone have World Cup tickets? Somebody does here, right? No?
No.
Okay.
I will now defer to Assistant City Manager Ramiro Adeva for the staff presentation.
All right, well, good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. Okay, so we're moving from fire to solid waste, and tonight we'll be giving an update on the ongoing discussions with Waste Management, otherwise known as WM, regarding solid waste services. To start off with some background, the current contract with WM dates back to January of 2017. It was initially a 6.5-year contract, which ran from January 2017 and ran through June of 2023, and it had an option to exercise one 4-year extension, which occurred. So when it's all said and done, it will have been a 10.5-year contract, which is set to expire on June 30th of 2027. The current franchise agreement is solely for residential and multifamily services. Commercial collection services and temporary roll-off and construction debris collection services are covered by multiple haulers that are issued annual permits. With the current contract expiring on June 30th, 2027, discussions have been taking place to determine whether agreeable terms can be reached on a potential successor agreement with WM, or if an RFP process will be needed. So to date, we've had between 4 and 5 meetings, I would say, with the WM team, which have been very collaborative. I do want to commend, the group that's here tonight. I would say that, hopefully you would agree that the conversations have been very cordial, and I think we've been moving in the same direction together to try to get to agreeable terms. So I very much appreciate you being here and also appreciate the conversations we've had so far. We do recognize the value of the current business relationship with WM, and we're working together to determine if we can come to agreeable terms on a successor agreement. Although we're not ready today to provide specific details or numbers, we've touched on a number of topics during our discussions, which have included service enhancements and operational performance standards. We've talked about rate structures and future adjustment methodologies. As we all know, solid waste services, the cost of providing solid waste services has risen, and so we're discussing the cost of services moving forward. Similar to how the current contract has discussions on CPI increases and solid waste rate adjustments, those details are being discussed as part of our discussions. There's the most favored cities clause, which preserves low rates for the city based on rates in comparable cities, those being Westlake Village and Calabasas. We've talked about contract term lengths coming out of a 10.5-year contract. As I mentioned, we've been having discussions about what a reasonable term length might look like for our community going forward. All sorts of compliance requirements per state law that we're working through. And again, we've had a lot of positive discussions to date, and they do remain ongoing. So that said, the recommendation in the staff report does contain 3 options, as you saw, for the council's consideration tonight. The first 2 options were first mentioned in August of 2025, when the council directed staff at that time to begin discussions with WM on the terms of a potential successor agreement. I believe the initial hope at that time, following those discussions, the hope was that staff would return in early 2026, which we're doing right now, to provide an update on those discussions and to originally recommend going with one of those first 2 options. I'm now going to revisit those first 2 options for reference. So option 1, which is on the slide, was going to direct staff to move forward with drafting a successor agreement with WM. Some key considerations with this option were that WM is a company the city has a long-standing relationship with, and there's familiarity there with each other that's resulted in many years of good solid waste services to the community. Another thing to consider is that with option 1, there's an opportunity to refine service enhancements. With this long-standing relationship, there's available information on what has worked well and what we could do to refine it. So there's an added benefit to having honest conversations and being able to point to specific examples of things that work and what needs to improve. Another thing to consider with option 1 is the same thing can be said for agreement terms, where this option does provide years worth of valuable information to see where things can be tightened up or added to the current agreement. One thing that I would like to point out is that there is a level of risk in this option related to time, in the sense that we might spend months discussing terms and ultimately not come to an agreeable an agreement, and that would mean that we still would need to leave the city enough time to pivot to the RFP process and be able to solicit those in a timely manner so that we're not pushing up against the June deadline of 2027. So that takes us to option 2, which was the competitive RFP process. So in the event we cannot come to agreeable terms with WM on a successor agreement, the city will need to release an RFP. Some key considerations with this option include that it does typically result in competitive pricing, obviously, because you're going out and you're listening to the open market. It is an opportunity to require in the RFP language service enhancements that the city specifically wants to have with a franchise hauler. And this option does come with transition impacts that I think are worth noting. They're not impossible to overcome, but nonetheless, I do want to kind of note them here. You have things such as container exchanges that you need to do. There's new routing schedules. There's public outreach requirements. There's careful coordination that's needed to avoid service disruptions. And so those are all things that play a part in making a decision as to whether or not option 2 is the preferred method ultimately. As I mentioned, back in August, the hope was that discussions to date would put us in a position where staff would be ready to make a recommendation to the City Council. However, despite the fact that we've had very collaborative conversations with WM, we're still not at that point today, which brings us to the timing concern that I mentioned earlier. So the key point being discussed right now revolves around the request of WM to have commercial exclusivity be a part of a successor agreement, which would be inclusive of the temporary roll-off and construction debris services. There's a host of details that related to this topic that I won't go into today since discussions are ongoing, but one important point worth noting is related to the 5-year notification requirement per state law that says if a decision is made by the council to grant a commercial exclusive, a 5-year clock starts to tick. This is essentially a wind-down period that allows existing commercial haulers to be able to prepare a transition plan to cease operations in the city after that 5-year period expires. So again, this 5-year period only occurs if and when the council decides to grant a commercial exclusive. If the council ultimately decides to not grant a commercial exclusive, then this discussion about a 5-year notification becomes a moot point. So all of that said, since the current franchise agreement expires in June 2027, we need an option that recognizes more time is still needed to complete discussions with WM, but also does not put the city in a scramble if ultimately we're unable to come to agreeable terms and need to pivot to an RFP. And so because of that, staff is also adding in option 3, which proposes a concurrent approach. Option 3 is one that directs staff to begin drafting an RFP now, but allows staff time to concurrently continue with discussions with WM. Then if terms can be agreed upon with WM, the city is in position to draft a successor agreement that goes into effect July 1st of 2027. If terms cannot be agreed to with WM, the city would be in a position to release an RFP immediately, since staff will have been concurrently working on it and seek a solid waste hauler in the open market. This gives an option that preserves some flexibility and minimizes risk associated with the fast approaching deadline. So that takes us to our staff recommendation, which we're recommending the council consider one of the 3 options presented and direct staff on a preferred option to move forward. And of course, those options would be 1, to direct staff to prepare a successor agreement with WM, Or 2, direct staff to initiate the RFP process. Or option 3, which is sort of a hybrid of the first two, which is to direct staff at this point to prepare an RFP, to start drafting an RFP while concurrently continuing WM discussions. And with that, that concludes our report. I do have the wonderful Kim Nilsson here, our solid waste consultant, to help answer any questions. And with that, we open it up.
Thank you, Ramiro. I'll start with Councilmember Anderson if you have any questions.
You know, actually, this is a little bit like the wildfire protection plan. I've asked lots of questions, so I could ask leading questions, but I'll just save them for comments.
Great. Thank you. Councilmember Anstead?
Yes, I have questions around the commercial exclusivity. I'm trying to understand more about what commercial exclusivity means. So, first of all, if I am a homeowner and I want to rent a dumpster I'm doing construction on my home, would that dumpster be under the commercial, would that be considered commercial?
That would, because that would be the roll-off for the temporary roll-off bin part of it. It's under the permit system, the annual permit system.
Okay, so that would be, and right now we have currently how many?
13.
13? Okay. And in addition to that roll-off, the other dumpsters that this affects, or the other garbage that this would affect, would it be for all of our local businesses? Then they would only have this waste management to choose from for their debris, and they're behind Ralph's or Vaughn's or whatever it is, they would only be able to use waste management dumpsters.
Yes, if ultimately the council goes with a commercial exclusive, then that would be the case.
Okay. And right now, those, even the commercial businesses in Agoura, they have 12 or 13 to choose from currently?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Yes, so just following up on what Councilmember Answer said. So if I needed a dumpster brought to the house, I would just have to go to Waste Management for it if they had, because right now you can bring in anybody, right?
Well, you'd have to go off of one of the approved haulers on the list, but you
Right.
have more options right now. If you go with the commercial,
I don't think people realize they have to go for, I mean, I know people that are having sort of gardening work done or something, and they just, you know, the gardener might bring in a dumpster and put it there. So that's not allowed? Is that what you're saying?
The gardeners have an exclusion that they can haul the material themselves. We have exclusions for the gardeners, and also if you have material that you want to take to be recycled, you can do that as well. That's an
Right.
exclusion out of it. Right now, we have our residential sector, that's the multifamily and the single family, and then we have the commercial and the roll-off. So you have, when we do our permits annually, the hauler can apply for commercial service, meaning our local businesses, our normal weekly service, or they could do temporary roll-off service.
Right.
And that is for something that is temporary, comes out for a week, comes out for a few days. So they check a box on which they want.
Right.
So right now, I think we have 4 commercial and the rest are roll-off. And the residents can pick who they want.
Okay, and so if you get a junk hauler, that doesn't count, that doesn't come under this?
Well, they're kind of rogue guys that nobody can track down in any jurisdiction.
So we're allowed to call the junk guy to come and take away patio furniture or something like that?
I'm not going to answer that.
you shouldn't.
You should or shouldn't?
You should. You mean to take out your own junk?
Yeah, I mean, if you call, you know, Mr. Junk, he can... Yeah, 1-800-JUNK, and they come and pick it up. I would still be able to do that?
If you pay them to take it away,
Yes.
you are not supposed to do that. If they take it for free, you can do that.
Ooh. I didn't know that. I'm learning things. Okay, thank you. And have we spoken to the local businesses, or will we speak to them to get any feedback?
We have not. Right now we've been trying to see if there are agreeable terms. I mean, the last time we spoke about this, the direction was to see if first we could work out some agreeable terms. And so we've been primarily focused on that based on the discussion that we had previously about there already being, WM having done a really good service for Agoura Hills up to this point over the last 10 years. And so we're really just primarily focused on that. If we got to a point, I imagine where we're seriously considering, moving over to the commercial side, then, that would probably start to involve a little bit more
We
feedback
do
from the
more
business
outreach.
community.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's a perfect segue into the question that I had, actually. I thought I had answers to everything, but this is one that I don't fully have, that I wanted to ask. So what I understand is that WM is very interested in commercial exclusivity. And so the question is, if we were to go with option one, is there a world where that's then part of what comes back to us, and we as a council then are, if we did do option one, we're then behind a bit of an 8-ball, like, okay, you're either going to do commercial exclusivity or you have no time to go out and RFP. So are we in some ways, it's not that we're exactly making this decision tonight, but in some ways, if we were to go to option one, are we really heavily weighted then in terms of, based on your understanding of the conversation so far, commercial exclusivity?
So just to clarify, Councilmember Anderson, option one would be the successor agreement, right, with WM. So I would say option one is intended to be a decision that says we're not looking to go towards an RFP, so we would not begin to even draft that. We would be just primarily focusing all our time and attention on just drafting a new successor agreement with, let's say, commercial exclusivity, if that's what the council also, would want to do, included within that type of agreement, which also takes a lot of time.
Well, that's what I'm asking, though, is would you at some point in these conversations come back to us before? Okay, but still, if we were to go to option one, you are then going down the road of that, of having these conversations about commercial exclusivity,
Right.
further eating away our time to be able to do
and that's why I think staff, we added in option 3, because what that enables us to do is to move down the path of drafting the RFP, which by default also includes preparing draft of a franchise agreement that would have to be appended to the RFP. And so at a later point, when the staff brings back options for the council to consider, if the idea at that point, if we were able to get to agreeable terms with WM, then we would be coming back to you saying, hey, look, we have a franchise agreement that has been working on being drafted right now alongside the RFP. And so we can just build on that now to adjust the language so that we can include the commercial exclusivity language that we would need. But then we maintain the flexibility that if that's not the case and we can't come to agreeable terms with WM, then we're already moving down the path of having an RFP and a draft franchise agreement in place so that we're ready to go out and solicit as soon as we can.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Spoiler alert. I was leaning towards option 3 in any event, and now I was 100% there already, and now I'm like doubling down on, okay, we really do need to have both paths available to us right now.
Thank you. I will now defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you. We did receive written correspondence from Douglas Crushen, Agoura Hills, and Barry Ellman, Agoura Hills, that was distributed to the council and will be part of the record. And we do have one speaker card, Sandra Persley.
Hello. You have 3 minutes. The green light will start. When you start speaking, when the yellow light appears, you'll have 30 seconds. You can adjust the microphone and begin whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council and staff. I'm Sandra Persley here on behalf of WM. I'm going to stick to my 3 minutes, but I do have many answers to your questions, and I'm happy to stay as long as you need. First, thank you to staff and many hours, and to Kim. We had a lot of discussions, a lot of time spent on this project. They have been fair and transparent and really sticklers for what's important to the city, and so they have represented the city very well. In that process, there was a long list of enhancements that we have worked hard to incorporate, but 2 main priorities. And the first priority was really the lowest possible rate with maximum value. The second priority that we heard was compliance with state regulations, specifically SB 1383. A lot has happened since we originally agreed in 2017. So with those two things in mind, that's where commercial exclusivity came into the conversation, because the commercial line of business is really important for SB 1383, and standardized service, standardized rates, and standardized compliance is helpful to the city. It's a common thing that you'll see in many jurisdictions in Southern California. The other thing with rates in mind, because commercial exclusivity allows us to spread the cost of service over a larger customer base, that was an option only, to allow for a lower overall rate for everyone, for residential customers, for commercial customers. So that was an optional service. I do want to clarify on page 2 of the staff report, it was a critical discussion point because it's a big policy change and we respect that change, but it was not a critical deal point in what we were offering. There were actually 2 scenarios of rates provided, one with commercial exclusivity for consideration, one without. Many of the services enhancements are included with both. Obviously, the commercial commitments would be separate and tied to the permit, if not part of the agreement, but we remain open and flexible to whatever option best suits the city. We're not here to be an inconvenience. We're not here to prescribe a program that your businesses or residents do not want. We are here to be open and responsive to your priorities, and that is what we spent a lot of time putting together. So I do want to clarify that it's not a critical component. Whatever you choose, whether it's negotiations or an RFP, we are honored to serve you. We will participate in that process, and we hope to serve you well into the future. I would like to clarify some of the questions, if that's okay, despite what's happening with the lights.
Yes, you may.
Okay, so first of all, on the commercial exclusivity, it did not contemplate temporary bin services. So this is meant to be permanent commercial services and permanent roll-off services. So this isn't like, oh, I want to clean up my property, or I've got a lot of leaves, and I'm being prepared for fires and responsive, and I want to clear debris, and so I need a roll-off temporarily. They would still have a choice and provider for that service. This is meant to be, I'm a business, I have a need for a permanent roll-off for large items or cardboard or whatever that may be. That would be an exclusive service to the provider after the 5-year wind-down period. The other thing that you asked, 1-800-JUNK, any licensed, credible provider that goes to an approved facility, I always recommend that people check that and ask for dump receipts, because illegal dumping is a thing. You can still use anybody. The way that I'd like to explain that is WM is in the business of containerized cleanup. We do not want to come into your home and pick items from the ground to the container. And so no matter what you decide to do, you would absolutely still maintain that privilege. And then I also just want to clarify your question. I hear you on item 3. I think it's a wise choice. That being said, we have presented a several-page proposal and some rate options, but I want to remain, I am flexible and responsive, and you are not held to whatever we have already discussed. There are rate impacts to different scenarios, and we've tried to be very transparent about that. And really, we started in 2017. 2018 was China National Sword. 2020 was a little thing called COVID that impacted a lot of things with the cost of goods, hyperinflation, and then SB 1383 fundamentally changed the industry. And all of those things happened since we signed our original agreement, all while the majority of your rates were virtually frozen for 5 years. So a lot has transpired, and we've been very transparent from a residential perspective that there is the need for a slight market reset, and we've provided a lot of options on how to minimize that impact for your ratepayers, understanding that that's a priority. Okay, I think I got everybody's questions, but I am still here and available.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
More about SB 1383 and why that's increasing rates and what exactly it's requiring.
So SB 1383,
Yes, you can answer. Thank you.
sorry, I'm used to the Teams button to raise my hand. Okay. SB 1383 was meant to capture organics in the solid waste stream. And in doing that, the state did a couple of things. One was prescribe mandatory organics collection for every single customer. So prior to that, you're used to your yard waste can. You did not have to put food in there. Now it is the law that you put your food scraps into your now organics container. Businesses prior to that, with 1826 and 341, there was mandatory commercial recycling and mandatory organics if you were over a certain size. SB 1383 changed that, where now every single business has to subscribe to some type of organics recovery program or have a waiver approved by the city according to a process prescribed by the city. The education requirements are very onerous. Usually your hauler, we've been doing this on behalf of the city despite it not being captured in our current agreement, but we have to monitor a percentage of every single route for contamination and educate your residents. All of the cart colors have to be standardized to a certain color by 2036, and then there's very extensive reporting and education requirements, and it's a lot to manage. On the commercial, I also want to let you know you are not first in this. You may be first in fire prevention and many other things, but when it comes to commercial exclusivity, you're actually near the end. Most jurisdictions have already, Westlake Village just did it a couple of years ago with contemplating a similar issue with rate stability and the need to comply with regulations. But most cities, it's very common in California especially, to have an exclusive franchise with all lines of business contemplated. Where you'll see the carve out is for the temp bin, so very wise questions, and then construction and demolition because of Cal Green building code and the obligations there. So it's not uncommon for there to be an exclusive franchise agreement. The city of Agoura Hills is actually one of the last remaining open market commercial structures, and you are welcome to stay that way, but there have been many that have gone before you, if that helps.
Does Thousand Oaks have an exclusive with their hauler?
They do, and so does Simi Valley and Moore Park and Westlake Village and Calabasas.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, so with that, are there any other public comments?
No further speaker cards.
Thank you. No more speaker cards. Do any council members have any further questions? No, not seeing here. We'll now move on to the deliberations, and I will start with Councilmember Anderson, since we reviewed some of this on Public Works.
So I just thank you for showing up. Thank you for your tremendous service to the city. We hear again and again and again that people are happy with their trash pick, and that's not a given. And it's one of the most basic parts. Like we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs in terms of a human being. That's basically a Maslow hierarchy of need for a community. So thank you for serving us so well. Thank you for your responsiveness, the great answers to the questions. Thank you for your openness, and for the reasons that I said earlier. And thank you for understanding. I think it's really important for us to, and especially given what you laid out, so much has changed in the last 5 years. I think it does make sense for us to at least have that as a possibility. So I appreciate the parallel track, and we'll be voting for option 3 or recommend option 3. I don't know if we're voting, or we're just recommending.
To use language direct staff to voting on it. Yes, you were correct the first time. I apologize. You were right. All right, move to Councilmember Anderson. Anstead. It's getting late.
You got it. Yeah, the A. So I appreciate the comments, and you answered, actually had some great answers for the questions that I had. I mean, I am concerned for our residents about the roll-off. And so with you answering my question that's carved out of this, that definitely makes a difference. I mean, for me personally, about kind of this commercial exclusivity. And then also understanding that other cities have adopted the commercial exclusivity. I think those are 2 good points. And so I think that's good. But I still think for our city and for my residents that I feel like I need to go with option 3 as well. And the fact that I would want staff to start the process for RFP, still negotiate with you guys. I think it sounds like that that our staff has said you guys have been negotiating in good faith and things are hopefully move along. I understand the argument that you're making that there's been a lot of increased cost over the last 5 years in waste management. But again, also there's a but there, is that you guys have that same cost and so does your competitors. And if they're offering, or if they're looking at 30% lower prices, then we might have to look at that as well. So I think that hopefully that we can come to some compromise in the middle or somewhere like that, to where there's somewhat of an increase over our other contract maybe, but not something that's going to shock our residents. So I think that's where we're coming from. So I think that you need to realize that that's what we need to consider, at least myself. I can just speak for myself. I would vote for option 3 but hope things pan out going forward.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Sylvester.
First of all, I'm sorry that it's 9:20 already, and you've been here since 6 o'clock, so apologies, it's been a long night. Full disclosure, I did meet with some of you, and we discussed all the services you have and the service that you can offer to us in the future. And I do trust our staff to work with you in a collaborative fashion to hammer out the best deal possible. But I agree with my fellow council members. I think we have nothing to lose with option 3, so that will be the one that I will be selecting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember, and echoing thank you guys for showing up tonight and for always showing up. And I know a lot of you traveled a long way to be here and sitting here for 3 hours. I appreciate that we're in good faith conversations, and I will be recommending or going with option 3 because a lot has changed, and while we have good service, but it is important to look at what's the best for the residents of Agoura Hills. And so I think that we can continue these good faith conversations working with you guys and just get a little bit more information before we make that decision. So I've heard from 3 of the council members, and I will now call for a motion, and I'm the 4th. I will now call for a motion and a second to direct staff to prepare an RFP while concurrently continuing discussions with Waste Management. Will the makers of the motion and the second state your names?
Councilmember Anderson so moves.
Councilmember Sylvester seconds.
I will now defer to the city clerk for roll call.
Councilmember Anderson?
Aye.
Councilmember Anstead?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Mayor Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Wolf, you have approval 4-0.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, moving on to our final item of the evening, discussion item 9. As previously with item number 8, Mayor Pro Tem Klein Lopez has recused herself from item 9 and stepped down from the council dais and has left the chamber. Our next item is a discussion to consider options regarding ABOP, which stands for Antifreeze, Battery, Oil, and Paint Solid Waste Program. I will now, make sure he's here, I will now defer to Assistant City Manager Romero Adeva for the staff presentation.
All right, yes. So we're here to talk about the ABOP program. And this item is to discuss whether to continue as is, modify, or discontinue the current used oil and household hazardous waste collection program, more commonly known as the ABOP program for Agoura Hills residents. So ABOP stands for, as you mentioned, Mayor Wolf, antifreeze, batteries, oil, and paint. This program consists of 3 events that happen annually every July, November, and March. And it's a regional program that collects oil and household hazardous waste from Agoura Hills, Calabasas, and Malibu. The current contract is set to expire on June 30th, 2026. With the cost of the program service being increased from the current $3,200 per event to $4,500 per event, staff felt the need to have a discussion tonight to determine how best to move forward with this program. So this table shows the current program cost and funding sources. It's worth noting that for many years, the city has received a CalRecycle grant in the amount of $5,000, which has helped to offset some of the costs of the program. The difference in the annual program cost and the CalRecycle grant is then absorbed by the city's solid waste special fund, which in this case amounts to $4,600. For fiscal year 2026-27, we've been informed by WM that the cost to providing the ABOP service per event will increase from the current $3,200 to $4,500 per event. This table shows a comparison of what that means in terms of financial impact. As we mentioned, currently the city's solid waste special fund absorbs $4,600 to deliver the program services annually. However, with the new cost for fiscal year 26-27, the city's solid waste special fund would need to absorb $8,500 to continue the program this upcoming fiscal year. So that's an 85% increase in contribution from the city's solid waste special fund. Some added considerations is that the CalRecycle grant remains fixed, as I mentioned, at $5,000, so that won't be changing. And based on the history of this program, collection costs could and will most likely continue to rise over time, thereby resulting in that gap increase again over time. So this table shows a comparison of services for both a program that's included within the current franchise agreement called At Your Door, or AYD, versus the ABOT program. Both of these programs essentially cover the same services, with the primary differences being that AYD is limited to 18 stops per month versus 3 events per year. And there's the location of the service delivery, which has pickups at your door versus a central location where everyone brings their waste to a site for disposal. One more point of comparison that I'd like to provide, although it's not really an apples to apples comparison, this is information regarding the program participation. So for the AYD program, and again, this is the program that's included in the franchise agreement, the program had between 17 to 19 stops per month between January and May, and serviced 218 stops during that time period. For the ABOT program, there's information here that's shown over the last 3 fiscal years. These numbers are total participants per year, which totals for all 3 events in a year. In 23-24, you'll see that the ABOT program had 6 events, and if you remember before the current contract, this program used to have 6 events, and then we made a change to go down to 3 events because, again, similar situation where the cost of the service was rising, and so the thought was to go from 6 to 3 in order to make it more affordable, but still deliver the service. I think when you look at this, the key takeaway would be that although you do see declining participation each year in the ABOT program, the majority of participants still do come from Agoura Hills. So this slide is intended to provide some options for the council to consider tonight. You could always continue with the ABOT program in its current format, which I mentioned would say that the city is going to absorb the increase in annual cost, which would be $8,500 that gets absorbed by the city's solid waste special fund. You could continue the ABOT program but decrease the events from 3 to 2 events per year. And so if you do the math, that's $4,500 per event times 2 events would be $9,000. When you subtract the $5,000 grant, that means that the city's solid waste special fund would then absorb the difference, which would be $4,000. You could continue the ABOT program and maybe possibly consider just decreasing it to 1 event per year. And then, of course, in that instance, that would be $4,500 for the 1 event. The grant is $5,000, so there'd be nothing coming out of the city's special fund. But it would mean that there's only 1 event per year. Or you could discontinue the ABOT program altogether and direct residents specifically to utilize the AYD program, which is already included as a service in the current franchise agreement, keeping in mind, again, that there is a cap or a limit on how many stops are allowed per month, but that is the service that does come to your door to pick up your waste items. So with that said, it takes us to our recommendation, which staff is respectfully recommending that the City Council discuss and provide direction on whether to continue I should say modify or discontinue the city's ABOT program beyond the expiration date of the current agreement through June 30th, 2026. And I will say that the pricing that I mentioned, the $4,500, will cover just the next fiscal year up to this point. It's being proposed for the July, November, and March events. So that's the $4,500 per event. And with that, that concludes our report, and Kim and I are here to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Before we move on to public comments, do any council members have any questions of staff? Councilmember Sylvester.
Could you go back to on the slide? Yes, the options. Okay, so our city's solid waste fund, what else is that used for?
The Solid Waste Fund is a restricted fund, and it's used for implementation of your AB 939, 1383, any solid waste program. So it can be used to pay for Solid Waste Solutions to do work. It can be used for an outreach program that's done at a city event. There are many, it just has to be tied to implementation of your programs for AB 939. The only two laws that allow you to collect a city surcharge from your commercial and residential sectors are AB 939 and 1383, and it has to go in a restricted fund.
Okay, so there are other programs that we could use that money for. It won't go to waste. Literally, if we don't use it for the ABOP program.
Actually, the $5,000, the solid waste fund, yes.
But that's, I'm just talking about the city's solid waste fund,
yes,
not the grant.
Correct.
So we could find other uses for that within the city. And so if we went to once a year, then the grant would cover that, and we could use our solid waste fund for other things, correct?
Correct.
And if we did an event once a year, that would allow all residents, if they weren't able to be captured in the rotation for waste management, then they would have the opportunity once a year to dispose of things that they no longer need, correct?
But they can only bring the ABOP items, the antifreeze oil, batteries, and paint. They can't bring everything that goes into the At Your Door program.
Sorry?
The
yes, but waste management does e-waste pickup as well.
Right.
So that's good. So I mean, that's how I get rid of it now. So I mean, we wouldn't be putting any resident at risk of having no way to get rid of it if we held one event a year, correct?
No, you would not.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
I just have a communications question, actually. I confess, I didn't know that we even had this At Your Door option. And if we were to move in the direction either of not having them at all, or as Councilmember Sylvester is suggesting, just one a year, can we communicate ourselves to our residents and say, hey, there's this great service that's available? And it's my fault, I'm sure we do communicate, and I just missed it. But could we then, with our fabulous communications? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Seeing or hearing no other questions, I will now defer to the city clerk for public comments.
Thank you. We did not receive any written correspondence, nor do we have any speaker cards.
Thank you. Are there any further questions in that 30 seconds that we had? No? We'll now move on to deliberations, and I'll start with Councilmember Anderson.
We are not a rich city, and we need every penny that we can for the things that are high priorities for us. And having this understanding of this At Your Door service, and Councilmember Sylvester, I hadn't thought about what you had suggested. That makes a whole lot of sense to me. So I would be inclined to go in that direction, to save as much money as we can, still offer that a place to go, and then make sure that our residents know that they can otherwise take care of their needs through this At Your Door service, which thank you.
So are you, I want to be clear, are you recommending one pickup a year? Okay. I apologize, sorry, one event per year, one ABOP event per year. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Anstead?
Yeah, also, I was not aware of the service either. So again, it's great to know, learn things as we go along here in the city council, but I don't know how many of my neighbors know about it either. And so I think it's a great program, and I definitely want to encourage the utilization. I know you guys don't want too much utilization, but I think it definitely is a positive with the contract with MW. So one a year for me would be perfect, I think, and so I would go with that option as well.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Well, I do know about the program because I've been using it for the last several years, so thank you. And yes, I think once a year will suffice.
I have used the program. I think it's a great program, and I also use the ABOP program, and I think it's a really important program, especially for our environment, because it's often those materials are being disposed of improperly, and this was a really great program that the city put on, but I understand that the costs are increasing, and so I am willing to move forward with one ABOP event per year, and really promoting the at-home service. And with that, a caveat, I really want to, when we have the one event, promote it as much as we can, and Acorn, work with waste management, work with our social media so that we can bulk up those numbers, and so that people know that this is happening. Concurrently promote the at-home service, because it's a wonderful service that is provided, and it helps. It's so beneficial on so many levels, and so that's where I stand on that. So with that, I will now call for a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation to provide the direction for one ABOP event per year.
Councilmember Sylvester so moves.
Councilmember Chris Anstead, second.
I will now defer to the city clerk for roll call.
Councilmember Anderson?
Aye.
Councilmember Anstead?
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester?
Aye.
Mayor Wolf?
Aye.
Mayor Wolf, you have approval 4-0.
Great. Thank you so much. Got through that. Let's move on to council staff comments. Are there any comments from staff? Amy, do you have anything? No? Robbie? No? Charmaine, just going to go through. Any comments from the city council? None here. So moving to our adjournment, a special city council budget workshop is scheduled for 4 p.m., followed by the regular city council meeting scheduled for 6 p.m. on Wednesday, June 10th, 2026 in the council chambers of the Civic Center located at 3001 Ladyface Court, Agoura Hills, California. I do want to thank our residents for sticking in for the whole meeting. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you guys for being here. It means a lot to have you participate in this process. And with that, I will gavel the meeting.